It is 7:00 p.m. It is Tuesday, the 22nd of September, the first day of autumn. Aren't we happy? It is 7:00, and I am calling the meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville to order. Tonight we are meeting via Zoom. Adam, do you have anybody in the council? You're at council chambers, right?
We are actually in the police training room for this meeting since they're in the, but yes, we do have 3 guests and they would like to speak during the public comments section.
During the public comment section. Okay. All right. So the meeting has been called to order. Colette?
Yes,
I know you're here somewhere.
I having problems with video again, but I'm here.
Okay. Would you like to call the roll, please?
Yes. Klein,
Here.
Shanley,
Isaac on mute.
Sorry about that. Here.
Yep.
Nichols,
Here.
Kopp,
Here.
Arts,
Here.
Doss,
Here.
and Ken, you said will be coming?
Ken is, yes, he will be concluding his HPC
Okay.
Historic Preservation Commission meeting and heading in. I don't know when that is. I'm actually not sure what they're meeting on.
Okay, I'll watch for him.
The first item on our agenda then is consideration of the consent calendar. The following may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature. We have the council minutes from the last meeting, September 8th. We have payment of bills. We have appointments to boards and commissions. And tonight I have 4 to the Community Safe Routes Committee for 2 3-year terms for 3-year terms ending on September 1, 2023. Kristen Fields and Cindy Tang. To the Historic Preservation Commission as an alternate for a partial term ending May 1, 2021, Fritz Bowman. And to the Redevelopment Authority Board for a partial term ending July 1, 2022, Barbara Stockhausen. I would, at this point in time, let people know that we also have 2 partial terms open on the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Commission, and that next month we will have 2 persons' terms expiring on the Airport Commission. So I'll take this opportunity to say, get your applications in, or let me know, or let Adam know if you are interested in an appointment in any of these boards and commissions. Additionally, tonight we have licenses, 1-year and 2-year operator licenses to sell and serve alcohol. We have a Class B combination beer and liquor license for Becker and Zamina Holdings LLC with Mike Osterholz as the agent for the premises at 280 West Main Street. And we have Resolution 2024 proclaiming October 2020 as United Nations Month. So, what is your pleasure?
I would move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Eileen and a second by Kathy to approve the consent agenda or consent calendar as presented. We'll vote. Colette?
Klein,
Yes.
Shanley,
Yes.
Kopp,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, the next part of our agenda is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. Please limit comments to no more than 5 minutes. It is customary for us to allow people to speak at the time of, and if the item is on the agenda, for the person to speak at that time rather than now. And we have 1 action agenda item tonight, Halloween trick-or-treating. We have 2 information and discussion items, the mask ordinance and the inclusivity, diversity, and equity update. I have had several people put in the chat that they want to speak about the mask mandate. I believe we'll defer all those to information and discussion under that category. And at that time, I'll do a round robin. So I'll call on people and you'll get your opportunity to speak at that time. So is there anyone, and there's a reaction, well, is there anyone who's here to speak on an item that is not about Halloween, that is not about masks, and that is not about inclusivity, diversity, and equity? Anybody here who has another thing they want to speak on? Adam, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I think we've got two here in the actual call in the council chambers. So I think you want to kick it off there?
Yes, thank you. My name's Jack Ludke.
Just a minute. Where are we? Who? Oh, it's Jack. Okay. Introduce yourself, Jack.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm the executive director for the Platteville Main Street program, and I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about sweet treats on Main. Our committee, promotions committee, met this morning and unanimously agreed, after we took a survey of all the merchants on Main Street, that we would not hold the traditional sweet treats this year, but they wanted to allow the kids to have some sense of normalcy and be able to celebrate Halloween. So they came up with two alternative ideas, and we are going to try to move ahead with those. The first one, of course, is still going to involve basically trick-or-treating on Main, but we are going to ask the city for permission to close the street on Main Street for an hour. And we would allow cars to stack up along Main Street, and we would have enough bags prepared ahead of time to allow the children to dress up in their costumes, get in mom and dad's car, and come down both sides of Main Street. And we would have our caricatures that are dressed up each Halloween, passing out bags of candies and different treats at that point. And we expect the numbers to be down considerably this year for all the reasons that have been enumerated before. Under the COVID situation, we are not going to advertise outside the city of the event and how we're going to do it. The details, I spoke to the police chief this morning, and we will be working with him to work out the details and then come to the city for permission to close Main for an hour on either the 24th of October or the 31st, depending on what the city is doing later this evening on the citywide trick-or-treating, which is currently scheduled for the 31st. The second thing that the committee wanted to do, and so that people could really participate in it and still be safe, is a photo contest where we would put together several prizes. We would have the little folks dress up. Their parents can take pictures of them, forward them to the Main Street program, to our website, and then we would have a judging of those costumes and award prizes, and the details of that still are not finalized, but there'd be several prizes given out. They felt that that would give some sense of normalcy to the young folks who may or may not be able to enjoy all of the events that normally take place at the Halloween time. So we will not be doing our pumpkin decorating event this year either, and hopefully we can bring that back again next year. Does anyone have any questions?
Let's see. Eileen, any questions?
No, no questions, Jack.
Let's see. Isaac, any questions?
No questions.
Robin?
I missed the date for Sweet Treats version.
They haven't picked a date, the 24th or the 31st. There's no date picked.
Sorry, no other questions.
Jason,
No questions right now.
Kathy,
No questions.
who did I miss? 6. I didn't miss anybody because Ken's not here. Okay. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
And Adam, you said you have a second person who wants to speak on something?
Yep, we've got one more.
Sounds good.
Hello, Madam President. Is it okay if I go ahead?
Yep. Introduce yourself and give your address, please.
Okay, great. Madam President and council members, my name is Sean Murphy Lopez, and I am running for Wisconsin State Assembly in District 49. And this covers all of Grant County, including, of course, the city of Platteville, and then the southwestern corner of Lafayette County and the western half of Richland County. And the election is coming up November 3rd, and I'm running against the incumbent Travis Tranel, who's been in office for 10 years. And I live up in Richland County, near the village of Yuba. My husband and I live out in the country, and for work, I'm a transportation planner. I work for a consulting firm that does traffic and transportation safety projects, especially for people bicycling and walking. I've done this work for about 12 years. We also own and manage an apartment building up in the village of Yuba. And then I serve on the Richland County Board of Supervisors. And I've been in that seat for 2.5 years. So I really appreciate you guys making the time for members of the public like myself to come. And I just want to compliment you on your 5-minute limit, because I think that's very generous. I can speak to that as a member of the Richland County Board of Supervisors. So I think the public is well served by that sort of a comment time. So the reason I'm running is because I'm originally from a rural area. I'm from Iowa, so I hope not too many people hold that against me. We're pretty close here, but I grew up in a rural area and always felt drawn to return to a rural area. And we were really attracted by all the beauty of Southwest Wisconsin. We moved here in 2014, all the organic farming, the communities, just how many small farms there were. And I've seen a lot of that disappear and slip away since the 80s when I was a kid, and I see it continuing to happen now. And that's what's really motivating me, because I think we can bring back our farms and our main streets, especially in our tiny villages, but also in our cities like Platteville. And I think we can get our school enrollments back up too. And I know that's a big challenge. I met with the chancellor last week, and I know that's a big challenge on the UW Platteville campus. And that's put a lot of people out of work. So, brings less life to a community when you see your school enrollments go down. So those are some of the big priorities I have. I also am really interested in learning about the issues that you guys face on the Common Council in the city of Platteville. I'm familiar with some of the state requirements that are imposed on local governments, like levy limits. Of course, we deal with that up in Richland County, like I'm sure you deal with that here, and other state requirements. And I want to learn more about what the issues are here in Platteville. I've been knocking on lots of doors. I've met with quite a few residents of Platteville to hear what their concerns are. I know there's a lot of safety concerns, obviously, with the virus right now. And I do think that's a big issue. I know you guys are addressing that tonight. My philosophy on this is I really want to work with the governor, not against him. We might not always agree with the governor, but let's at least sit down and talk and work, because that's what our assembly representatives are hired to do. And also, we need to really focus on keeping our businesses, especially those in the hospitality industry. We hear a lot of struggles with that right now, especially related to mask wearing and making sure that those businesses can keep operating. And then also, farms are really important in our area, and I think we need to hold people accountable who are putting farmers out of business. And there's too much of that happening right now. I just want to mention our website. If anyone's interested in more information, it's SeanForRuralWisconsin.com, and Sean is spelled S-H-A-U-N, and for is F-O-R. And it would be an honor to serve the residents of Platteville. Folks can get in touch with me anytime. I spend a lot of time in Platteville these days, and I look forward to spending more time here. So thank you, Madam President.
Well, thank you, Sean, for attending our meeting tonight and actually being in Platteville tonight. So, all right. Adam, do you have anybody else in the police training room?
We do not.
And Jody, you're in your office. No one is in the council chamber, or is Howard in the council chamber? No? Okay. All right. Yeah, I haven't seen anything in the chat about anybody wanting to speak about anything other than the mask ordinance or something else down on our agenda. So with that, Mr. Palmer, are you talking about masks? Yes? Put your thumb up if you are.
Yes, I will be.
Okay, so we'll wait for you. I'm just looking through here. I think, and I see Matt Larson. Okay. All right, I think then we're ready to go on to the next portion of our agenda, which is reports. We have board, commission, and committee minutes. And these include from the Plan Commission, Community Safe Routes Committee, Dawes, Shanley, and Arts. Anything to add, Isaac or Jason?
Nothing.
No, just that we're going to have another joint meeting, I believe, October 5th to hopefully wrap up some of the sidewalk ordinance stuff.
Yes, and we are working, I would add that we're working on sidewalk policy. It's not an ordinance, it's
Sidewalk policy, sorry. Yeah.
So we've been working on that, like this will be the third meeting. All right, library board, Robin.
Nothing to add.
Airport commission, Kathy.
Nothing to add.
Water and Sewer Commission, Isaac. I don't know if Ken has
Nothing.
joined us. Ken? I don't know if he's.
Nothing to add.
Appears Ken is not here. I would just say we'll be reviewing the budget next week at a special meeting on Wednesday for the water and sewer utility. Housing Authority Board, Ken is not here, so we'll move on. And License Committee, Isaac or Eileen, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add here either. Okay, that's the reports from boards, commissions, and committees. That means we move into the next item on our agenda, which is an action item. This is Halloween trick or treating. And I believe that, Adam, you're taking the lead on this? Please.
Probably Doug.
Or Doug, yeah, I'm trying to get to my agenda. Whoever.
I'll kick things off. Per past practice, we've submitted the potential trick-or-treating hours for the city of Platteville for your consideration. Per past practice, again, we're going with hours very similar to other years, and it will is projected to be on October 31st. The wild card in all of this, that has been the wild card for everything in 2020, is COVID-19. So that the activity itself of trick-or-treating takes on a new concern. And typically this is just part of the consent agenda, but this year it's on for actual action because we wanted to have some overt action on the part of the council when considering this activity.
Okay, yeah, Doug, would you like to continue with what the parameters are going to be?
It would, again, we're projecting on actually Saturday, October 31st from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. We like to get in a couple hours of daylight time and a couple hours of darkness so that people get the full effect of the Halloween trick-or-treating. We did include some potential safety guidelines that could be implemented, and those were researched on the web and sought out elsewhere, CDC and whatnot, to try and hopefully make this event, if we decide to go forward with it, be a little bit safer activity.
Okay, and since Doug, we have so many people on tonight that probably don't have access to the packet, I want you to detail the suggested safety measures.
Sure. With the event happening outdoors, if household members can stick together, travel in as small a group as possible, and distance themselves from others, that would be recommended. Health professionals recommend children 5 years of age and older to wear masks, even outdoors, for added safety. And when we say mask, we mean surgical or procedure masks, not their costume masks. They can be worn in addition to that if the costume masks don't inhibit the breathing and whatnot. People handing out treats and those trick-or-treating will have face-to-face exposures. The wearing of masks will help protect everyone in this endeavor. At home, it's recommended that one person be designated the person to give out candy. It's best if that is an adult. Don't leave the bowl out for kids to dig through. That would encourage people to kind of cross-contaminate potentially. All treats that you plan to hand out should be individually wrapped and store-bought. And as with all things, the use of hand sanitizer multiple times throughout the evening is recommended.
Okay, that is the presentation on the recommendation that we move forward with Halloween trick-or-treating on Saturday, October 31st, time 3 to 7. Of course, this is a completely voluntary activity. No one has to participate. So, Eileen, questions, concerns, or comments?
No questions.
Isaac, questions, concerns, or comments?
No questions or concerns.
Jason, questions, concerns, or comments?
Yeah, so has anyone reached out to the Grant County Health Department or Southwest Health in terms of what kind of their thoughts were on this?
Adam, do you want to take that?
Yep, I can take that one. So on the Grant County kind of emergency management call, this was brought up.
Somebody has to mute their iPad at the police station.
Yeah,
There we go. How's that?
very good.
Okay, so this is a recurring topic that's been brought up during the Grant County emergency management calls that I'm on. And a lot of the safety procedures that you see on here are what is being recommended. Our intention is, and kind of talking with Jeff Kindry from Grant County, is as Halloween approaches, there's going to be more and more information that's going to be coming out in regards to kind of recommendations. Some of the added recommendations are, considering if you have the ability, put out a table and space out, treats on those tables that you're giving out. So what we'll be working on, obviously, if this is approved, I'll be working with our communication specialist, Jody, and ensuring that we get as much of that information out to the public. We'll put it on the COVID-19 page, Facebook, and continually kind of promote the CDC and kind of Grant County recommendations that come out.
I guess my concerns are that there's a lot of variables as well in terms of like what we're asking people to do. And I guess that's a kind of a concern for me in terms of like, you know, again, we're asking people to take the steps to make the community safe. But then on the other hand, we have people that are arguing against mask ordinances and taking some of those safety precautions. So that really kind of makes me worried about the risks and all the variables that are with that. So.
Okay. Kathy, questions, concerns, or comments?
Nothing at this time.
Robin, questions, concerns, or comments?
I just think that it's appropriate to recognize that you say it's voluntary, but it's pretty hard when everyone else is doing it for a parent to tell their kids no. So we do have some sort of onus on us for making that decision. But there's a lot of factors to weigh in on, and at this time, I don't have any questions.
Okay, Ken has just joined us. So Colette, you might note that. I see Ken. Ken, your microphone is muted. And currently, Ken, we are talking about Halloween trick-or-treating. And you have, just a minute, let me finish. You have the packet and have seen the full write-up from Doug, which he, from the chief, which he just went through for all of us. And now I'm asking council members for comments, questions, and concerns. And you're, other than me, the final person to do so. So, trick-or-treating, and you'll have to unmute yourself.
Well, I don't have any concerns.
Okay.
I read that only one can come to the door at a time, right?
Well, that would be the hope. One could come at a time. That would be the plan.
And they can't come in the house either.
Right. Okay, we've been around. I will say that I believe if people do this reasonably, first of all, people in the community do not have to participate. It would be turning lights on if you want to participate, and not having a light on or your door open if you don't want to participate. So as a person who may be receiving trick-or-treaters, I have complete control whether or not I allow that. And I would say that with what Jack talked about in terms of other opportunities, photo contests, perhaps a drive-through bag on Main Street, that kind of thing, plus this, that there are multiple opportunities that this would not have to be the one that people would choose. So I believe that there's reasonable belief that this could work. Oh, the question is, are we ready to take action? And is there anyone who would like to propose action?
I make a motion to,
Robin,
All right.
you were,
Did you ask for citizen comments on this topic?
no one asked to make a comment.
Okay, I thought that you would make a point of asking, but
I did that at the beginning. I said I would take comments on any topic during the time the topic was reviewed. And the only things that I have seen are people who want to make comments about masks. Okay. So Isaac, I'm sorry. You said.
I make a motion to move to establish the trick and treating hours on Saturday, October 31st, 2020 from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m.
And Isaac, how about the recommendations relative to what the police have decided?
Also to include the recommendations by the Platteville Police Department.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Isaac and a second by Robin to approve Halloween trick-or-treating on October 31st from 3 to 7, according to the guidelines established by the police department, with the knowledge that our communication folks will put out a lot of information about that. So folks, we're going to vote. So Colette?
Okay.
Killian,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Shanley,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Hop,
Yes. Whoops.
Arts,
No.
Doss.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed with Arts opposed.
Okay. That is the only action item on our agenda tonight. The second, we have 2 items on our information and discussion. And the first of those items is ordinance, City of Platteville mask ordinance. We'll start with Adam, our city manager. And I believe that's you, Adam, right?
That would be me.
To talk about this, and then we will move through for citizens' comments, and we will do that one person at a time. We won't be talking over each other, okay? You can call me anything you want. I'm just one of those old-fashioned teachers. Okay, Adam.
All right, so I think one of the things that I kind of want to do is just kind of do a recap of what's been put in place and kind of where things currently stand. Obviously today there was some news that came out about kind of the governor's extension of a mask mandate, so how that applies to this ordinance and kind of where that goes. So right now, obviously, the city of Platteville did pass what is considered a mass resolution. That was adopted by the Common Council on Tuesday, August 25th. Within that kind of resolution was again declaring a public health emergency that was declared for 60 days or until revoked by the city council. So regardless of anything that would happen in the future with the mandate, this resolution basically has the ability to be in place until perpetuity or until at a time the city council determines that the mass resolution is no longer needed. Specifically in this resolution, what it designated is due to the fact that the city does not have a health department, Grant County Health Department was identified as a lead agency to respond to public health emergencies. And then as part of my role as the city manager and emergency management director, it gives me the authority to take all necessary and appropriate measures to prevent and respond to COVID-19. One of the main components of this resolution is the direction or requirement of face coverings for city employees and other persons on any municipal owned property or in a city owned facility. So this would basically apply to obviously City Hall, the library, our museum, and then also apply to kind of park pavilions or city activities outside when social distancing is not possible. So if they're not able to maintain 6 feet outside, we then would be asking individuals at city events to be wearing masks. The other component to this resolution then is it strongly urges individuals 5 and older to wear a face covering in indoor spaces, outdoor areas where 10 or more are gathered and unable to maintain 6 feet of distance, and when utilizing any form of public transportation services. So then obviously we have the Governor Evers mask mandate. So the original mask mandate went into effect on August 1st, 2020, which required face coverings in certain situations, mainly in all indoor facilities that are open to the public. It was set to expire on Monday, September 28th, which is one of the reasons why this agenda item was put on the agenda for consideration and discussion. But obviously, as of this morning, the governor issued Executive Order number 90, and with that emergency order number 1, essentially extending the provisions that were put in place with the August 1st mandate. And now those kind of policies and regulations are set to continue and shall expire on November 21st, 2020, or would be extended again by a subsequent superseding emergency order. So specifically with the mask mandate, there's an order that requires face coverings for age 5 and older to be worn when an individual is indoors or is in what is defined as an enclosed space other than their private residence, and then also when there is another person not of their family or living unit in the same room or space. There are exceptions that are put in again into this mandate that do allow you not to be wearing a mask when you are eating or drinking. If you have trouble breathing, a medical condition, or some of the exemptions that have been established by the Center for Disease Control. There is currently a pending litigation involved with the original mask mandate that was filed by the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, which is pending. That's something that as kind of staff and as the council, we continue to monitor and try to see where that goes. There was some information indicating today that the state legislature is looking into consideration of holding a special session to talk about this. And then within there, it talks about any local order or mandate that due to the governor's order, it would supersede any local order that is less restrictive. And local government may be able to issue orders that would be more restrictive than the governor's mask mandate. So obviously, things to consider. The matter of face coverings is definitely something that has become a very polarizing and even to a point a political issue. So my role, obviously, as the city manager is to remain neutral and obviously present to the council and to the public options, considerations, and alternatives. And obviously, we have a lot of people that want to speak. But I know that council members have received a petition signed by various residents, surrounding residents and commuters, asking for the city of Platteville to create an ordinance enforcing mask utilization. I also know that myself and council members have received comments via email about concerns against the mask ordinance due to a number of factors relating towards health concerns and kind of the age-old question of how involved should a municipality be in the regulation of a business or individuals. So what is kind of in front of the council tonight for consideration is specifically if the city of Platteville would want to establish its own mask ordinance. There is some question as to our mask ordinance that was proposed is very similar to what is currently established in the governor's order. So there may be some further clarification we would need to get from the city attorney about, if this were to be established, what is kind of procedural 1 or 2. There always is the legal question as to whether this ordinance would hold up in court. And that's mainly just because, as we've talked about throughout this process and with COVID-19, this is a lot of uncharted territory for the city and for everybody. So there isn't really a lot of case history or, regulatory or court decisions. And some of the concern, talking with the health department and also with other city managers and administrators is, when the Safer at Home order got turned over by the Supreme Court, that's the highest court in the state. So there is some concern about, any type of ordinance or restrictions that cities would put on, how those would be reviewed from the legal side. So what you have in front of you is an ordinance that was very much drafted after the city of Whitewater created an ordinance that was passed before the governor's original order went into effect. What it does is essentially requires masks to be worn indoors for any person 5 years or older who is present in the city of Platteville should wear a mask covering whenever the person is in a building open to the public and is in an area of the building open to the public, or for instance, if they would be a pedestrian picking up food, drinks, or goods inside or outside of the building or waiting in line to enter such an establishment. They would be required to wear a mask. They would also be required to wear a mask if they're attending a city-sponsored event or program. So such as if they were, as we talked about in the City Park Pavilion, if they weren't able to social distance and there was enough people, or for instance, in the new Brodsky Center. What happens here is the ordinance, very similar to the governor's order, does apply for the exceptions that the CDC has indicated for anybody that would have a medical condition or mental health condition. Enforcement of the ordinance would be with the Platteville Police Department. What they first would do would, again, try to get voluntary compliance. If they could not get either that individual or that particular entity to comply, they would issue a warning for first offenses, and then they would only issue a citation for first offenses if the individual or entity refuses to comply with the ordinance. And then any person after that point violating the ordinance would be up to a citation of not less than $10 and not more than $40 for a first offense, and then not less than $50 and not more than $150 for a second and subsequent offense. And then each violation should be considered a separate offense. So pretty much, as we've talked about, some of the budget and fiscal impacts that potentially would be related to this ordinance would obviously be anything pertaining to legal services. The city does have a very limited budget when it comes to legal considerations. So if there were to be some form of a challenge, that obviously would be something that would be considered unbudgeted. So that's something to take into effect. So what staff is trying to look at or trying to get a better understanding from the council is, what particular direction would you like to proceed in? Is this something that you would like to continue? Would you like to just keep the resolution in place? With the governor's order, is this something now that, you want to kind of wait and see what happens with that before moving forward? And obviously there's a lot of, I think, members from the public that would like to voice their concerns, either yay or nay with this. So that's kind of the quick version. I did look into, just as the last point, what other municipalities obviously have done that are similar to us. The majority of them have done very similar, where they have passed a resolution asking for, making it mandatory in all of their buildings to require masks, and then asking everybody to kind of join them in that effort. I know Oshkosh, before the governor's kind of reorder today, was considering looking into an ordinance, and that was being discussed probably at the exact same time we are. But the only municipality, as far that I'm aware of right now, that do have ordinances in place would be Dane County and Madison, Green Bay, and Whitewater, Superior, Shorewood, Racine, Milwaukee. So there are a couple out there, but otherwise the majority of other municipalities have tended to gone more of the resolution route.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Now, before we start with citizens' comments, I'm just going to ask council members quick. Eileen, any specific question of Adam?
No, not at this time.
Isaac, any specific question for just Adam before we hear from others?
Not really a question, but one of the ones on here on the ordinance was possible would be like the A. I guess it's pretty vague, is when it states that, or is in the area of a building open to the public. So if a person is walking up Main Street, sidewalks aren't very wide. Plus, if we have Second Main having outdoor seating, that can be considered close. Every one of those buildings close enough to where you have to have a mask on at that point. So that to me is pretty vague on, in the area of a building open to the public. So I guess I would say I would be more in favor of still with the resolution that we have.
Well, we haven't heard from folks yet.
Yeah.
Jason, any specific questions for Adam?
Yeah, do you know roughly the amount of people that signed the petition that are wanting a mask ordinance? And then also, do you roughly have the numbers of comments and things sent in, emails, in terms of opposition?
We'll get to Austin soon. So this is just specific questions of Adam on his presentation. Any specific questions?
I guess I have nothing else.
Okay, Kathy, any specific questions for Adam on his presentation?
You asked me, Barb?
Yes.
No questions at this time.
Robin, any specific questions just of Adam on his presentation?
Yeah, you've kind of made this comment a couple times, and I'm just wondering if maybe I'm misunderstanding, or if you could clarify regarding the first order by the governor that was challenged or turned down by the Supreme Court. And my interpretation of that was a matter of what was his authority to do to extend that, where the pushback, in my understanding, was for the local level to take more action as opposed to the governor. So part of the way that I hear you presenting it is we've seen it through the courts and there's already concern, but I feel my understanding of it is that we're trying to address that particular concern by being proactive on a local level. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that point.
Yeah, so the concern that's been addressed in a lot of the meetings that I've been in is, again, because there isn't a lot of case history with specifically pandemics and how municipalities have handled that. If you read the actual, state statute, it does not clearly spell out, as a city manager and as a city, we have the ability to do X regarding pandemics. So that's been some of the legal question that has been continually talked about with our attorney. Our attorney does feel, and has stated in emails that he feels we have the authority to create this ordinance and it would fall under that. But when you get into a legal challenge, very similar to what happened with the governor, you start getting into the minutia of wording and sentences, and that's the concern that's been brought up by a lot of public health officials is the more, decisions and things start going into the court, the less and less ability they feel they have to actively fight the pandemic. So that's always kind of been it gets into the weeds. There isn't a really good, clear answer that you get.
Okay, thank you. Another point Isaac kind of brought up that if I went back and reread more carefully, but I was thinking the area of the building was referring to an internal space that was open or not open to the public, like an office. So if somebody was behind closed doors, they would be able to use without the mask. But if they are, waiting at a register or out on the floor where the public goes, then they would have to have a mask. I'm not sure if somebody wants to speak to clarify that point, but I wasn't interpreting it like Isaac was saying is near the building. I was assuming different spaces within the building. And then I was wondering if Adam could speak to if anyone's defined how religious exemptions might be used or defined, if someone were to just argue body autonomy, some sort of more vague explanation, would they be able to use that and justify not wearing a mask?
My understanding is typically that, and this may be more from the enforcement end, but I know Doug and I have had, the chief and I have had conversations on this, is generally if somebody claims that they have a medical exemption or it is religion, that tends to be taken we don't press that further. And that's one of the exemptions that's in there is persons whose religious beliefs prevent them from wearing a face covering. So if somebody were to say that it is against their religion to, wear a mask, if an officer was called to enforce that or, was called into question that, they then would take that and say, nope, that's, they're allowed not to do it.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, Ken, this is the time to ask any questions specifically on Adam's presentation.
Well, my question is, if we pass a mask ordinance, how soon would it go into effect? In other words, if we pass one in first part of November, first meeting, how soon would that ordinance be in effect? How long does it take? Do we have to hold a public hearing?
Adam.
Yep, that's a good question. So we did ask our attorney for clarification on that. Colette actually sent an email to him. He indicated that the public hearing portion of it is up to kind of the council's discretion if you wanted to hold a public hearing, but we would be required to follow kind of the statutory requirements to post it. So if it were approved, we would need to make sure then that ordinance was then posted properly in all of the appropriate spaces. And I just want to make sure, Colette, did I miss anything with that? I think that's what I saw.
So how long would that take? Am I asking a question that's a little difficult to figure out?
Well,
if you're talking a public hearing standpoint, normally that's either class 1 or class 2 notice. So typically that's at least 2 weeks that you give for that information to be posted into the paper, so that then if anybody wants to speak on it, it would be there. From the ordinance standpoint, as far as if it's approved, I'd have to dig a little further into that to find out what the actual statutory requirement is for how long that has to be posted.
Okay, thank you.
okay, thank you, Adam. And now we will begin our little round robin. I will call on 2 people first who contacted me prior to the meeting to speak. And one of those is Austin McCord. So Austin, you spoke at our last meeting during citizens comment about petitions. you forwarded me information today that I forwarded to the entire council. So please go ahead. I heard there were a couple of questions tonight, so please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So since the last time we talked, I did start a petition. I did email that to you, and the updated numbers on that were 578 signatures to go ahead with a mask ordinance in Platteville, or as Adam called it, a resolution, or whatever verbiage needs to be used. So I come tonight as like a positive support for you guys as a council, because I understand and I empathize with all of the different angles that you're hearing right now. You're receiving both sides of the fence, whether it comes to masks or no masks, and I empathize with all of you and your decision making. And I really want to work together with the council, with the regional chamber, with Jack from the Main Street program, with UWP, with the Platteville School District, and business owners from all around to hammer down something that we can really be proud of, and realize that we are being proactive and preemptive in the measures concerning this, because we are coming up on flu season, and no matter how you feel about COVID, there's enough flu to go around. So we really don't know, and no one knows what's going to happen in the next few months. So the least that we can do is be proactive in that measure, so we don't have to rely on handing out grants and small business loans for relief if we do have to close businesses for any amount of time, even if it's the lowest of 2 weeks. The point I really want to emphasize is, if you do move forward with an ordinance or what have you, is to be able to work with local law enforcement and the local health department to enforce it on a business to business basis. Whereas my business on Main Street will have masks up, we already do. But if the business across the street doesn't adhere to your mandate, then me wearing masks and my employees wearing masks is useless in our effort to try to slow any type of community spread. So being able to call Doug there and have him go down to Quick Trip and just reinforce the idea, hey, employees, you should be wearing masks. This is a city ordinance, or what have you, because that's the struggle I'm finding right now. Is it's not necessarily me asking someone who comes into my business to remember to put a mask on. That's great, and they almost always do, and it's been really positive interactions we've had. There are a few negative, but the issue comes when the store, like I said, a store parallel to you may not ask people to put the mask on or take it as seriously, and then it just unravels everything that we're trying to accomplish here. So that's what I want to be able to know, that the ordinance is being enforced on some level, and it's being enforced in businesses, because businesses have your foot traffic. Quick Trip, it's probably one of the busiest besides Walmart or the big stores out, there. Quick Trip is probably your biggest foot traffic per day in Platteville. And I go in there and I see maybe 20 to 30 people in line without masks, even while their door says, please wear a mask in here. A lot of those people are commuters coming from out of town, and a lot of those are residents of Platteville, and it is very terrifying. And like I said, I am trying to empathize with everybody, whether it be a pre-existing condition where they can't wear a mask. We've had a few of those come in the store, and we provide options for them to still get their coffee, but within safety of us. So there is something to reach here, but I think it's going to take everybody working together and sharing ideas to really get it done.
Thank you, Austin. And Austin, thank you for forwarding the petition earlier, and also for your explanation relative to how you collected the signatures and how some people's addresses may appear very strange because that may be where they registered before. So you had 578, and I think you said, you probably want to dismiss, 20 or 30 of those because they probably aren't from here. But thank you for sharing that. And like I said, I shared that with Adam and with the rest of the company. Another person who contacted me prior to the meeting to speak is Paige Smith. So Paige is representing UW Platteville tonight. So Paige, your turn.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the council this evening. My name is Paige Smith, and I'm the Vice Chancellor for Administrative Services at UW Platteville. This is the prepared statement on behalf of Chancellor Dennis J. Shields and the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. The university appreciates the strong and continued support and collaboration it has with the City of Platteville and its partners. This relationship is instrumental in keeping our entire community safe and healthy. In response to COVID-19 and its impact on our communities, the university has implemented a key message to its campus community members in the form of the 3 W's. Wear your mask, wash your hands, watch your distance. During these past few months, the university has taken significant steps to create a safe and clean environment for our campus community. The goal is to remain open for business and promote a hybrid, face-to-face, and online learning environment for our students. Keeping our students on campus will also greatly benefit the city businesses. So far, the safety plans that we've implemented have been successful in keeping the number of reported positive COVID cases low and manageable, but we must remain diligent in this fight against COVID. Passing the proposed ordinance to require face coverings is a key aspect of reducing the spread of the virus and keeping our community safe. To that end, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville fully supports the city's proposed ordinance. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this statement to the council this evening.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
And now we'll start around, and I'm just going to go across my screen, so it's whoever comes up next to me. And if you don't want to speak, then just if some of you have your video on, some don't. If you don't want to speak, just do a thumbs down or do some signal. Okay. Vicki Peterson, you're the first one on my screen.
Thank you. So like Barb said, my name is Vicki Peterson. I live at 655 North 4th Street in Platteville. Tonight, I would like to speak in support of a citywide enforceable mask ordinance. And the reason for the enforceable caveat is that for masks to be most effective, they need to be worn by everyone. And it's really important to note that when they're worn appropriately by everyone, they do a really good job. They are highly effective at preventing the spread of COVID-19. And so to speak to Austin's comment, if I am wearing a mask and I have COVID, masks scientifically do a really good job of keeping me from spreading that to other people. But if I'm wearing a mask and I go into a business where others are not wearing masks and there is a person who has COVID, I am still likely to contract COVID. Okay, and so it's just the logistics of how masks work. They do a really good job when there is total compliance. So you probably already know that the curve in Wisconsin, the curve in Grant County is climbing exponentially. And continued community spread like this, it puts our schools at risk of having to pivot to virtual. We've seen that most people are not in favor of that. It endangers the lives of our citizens. And it also endangers the livelihood of our locally owned businesses that we love and appreciate in Platteville. I really just want to say, and I know that people have heard this, but I don't know why people aren't taking it to heart. The act of wearing a mask is not political. It is a gesture that you care about your neighbors. And I feel like I have not lived in Platteville my whole life. I think we've been here 8 years now, but it has been far long enough to know that our community comes together all the time to support one another. I have seen so many efforts that just run the gamut of ways that we look out for one another, we protect one another, and we're there for people when tragedy strikes. This is just another one of those times. And I know that we can do this. And so I really do just want to reiterate that the enforceable part of this is very important, because I often see signs on doors that say masks are required, and I walk in and I'm the only person wearing a mask. And I want life to get back to normal, and I want to protect our community. And so thank you very much to all of you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Vicki. Next on my screen, I see Eric Rayner. Did I get it right?
It's Eric Roner.
Roner, okay.
Hello, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Your address, Eric.
Huh?
Your address.
Oh,
Address.
1245 North 4th Street, Platteville.
Okay.
You know, I don't know. I'm not going to say much that everybody else hasn't told you already. But honestly, the proof is in the pudding. We can't sit in a room and make these decisions. We have to be on this video call right here. So to be on the video call because it's not safe to be together, tell everybody it's safe to be together, is a little pointless in my eyes. We will never know if we did too much, but we will assuredly know when we did too little. And we've done too little. I'm scared to send my kids out. Yeah, I have fear. It's healthy. It keeps you alive. It's a good, thing to have. And I'm kind of sick of feeling like that. I wish we could all pull together as a community and take care of one another. I moved my whole family here, including my mother, and she's been in a nursing home, and I haven't seen her since February. And this is getting a little taxing. So we need to do something, and do something quickly. Have a good day.
Thanks, Eric. Robert Snyder, you're next on my screen.
Thank you, Barb. I'm Robert Snyder. I live at 25 Maple Drive in Platteville. I am one of the 578 signatories on the petition. I would first like to commend Austin McCourt for his leadership on this issue. I would like to argue in favor of the ordinance because the ordinance does in fact promote inclusivity. In tonight's council agenda packet, there is a summary sheet entitled Inclusivity, Diversity, and Equity Update. The city has defined inclusivity as the following: all age groups, length of residency, race, color, ethnicity, ancestry, national origin, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender, gender expression, marital family status, language, mental or physical impairment or disability, military status, economic class, immigration status, foster status, body size, or any other characteristic. One of the issues with COVID is prior health conditions. Prior health conditions seems to be a factor in terms of how hard COVID may hit someone and the lasting effects of COVID. When it comes to the city's inclusivity definition, COVID knows no boundaries with that definition. COVID can attack anyone in the city's definition of inclusivity and the characteristics of inclusivity. An extremely simple action. An extremely simple action allows all of us to look out for the well-being of our entire community. And so again, I urge the council to pass the mask mandate because it does in fact promote inclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Next on my screen is Tony Palmer. Tony or Royal?
It's Royal here.
Oh, Royal, okay.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And also, I want to also thank Austin for putting together that petition. And I want to also represent that position as well as favoring an ordinance that goes in that would be enforceable by the law to punish anyone who does not wear a mask in a public space or business. One of my thoughts that I want to just put out there rhetorically, I guess, is what about reporting to a business or reporting a business? Something that comes to mind is 2nd Street in general. All of the bars on there are causing a direct increase in our positive COVID cases. And how do we hold that business responsible rather than just the individuals? And then also the medical conditions piece, I have concerns with, because there's no proof. There's no right question to ask someone, like what medical condition is it that you currently are suffering from that prohibits you from wearing a mask? I don't have any right to ask someone that question, but they have whatever reason to say to me they have a medical condition, whether it be that they stubbed their toe earlier that day. And then I also heard, and I don't know this to be factually true, but since we do have Paige Smith on the call, that the university had put out a number, kind of like a guideline of 250 positive COVID tests within the student body within, I don't know, a couple of weeks span or maybe a month span. And that was going to be their threshold for whether or not they needed to pull the students away from the campus. I, again, don't know that that's factually based, but I do want to say that which 250 families were you planning on calling that tested positive that their child may be at great danger of dying because they contracted COVID while they were at your school? Other than that, I just want to reiterate that all of the businesses on Main Street, oh, and I apologize, I didn't give my address. It's 127 East Main. That would be the corner of 2nd and Main where all of the current Platteville cases are being spread. So I have an extra devoted, impassioned sense of a concern because not only do I reside in the epicenter of it, I work on Main Street as well as the business owner of Driftless Market. I moved here in January to purchase the Driftless Market, and within a month, COVID had become a full spread pandemic. Purchasing a grocery store in a pandemic was never part of our plan, but we've certainly done our best to stay alive and to keep that business a pillar in the community as it has been for the last 12 to 13 years. We need people to wear their masks when they enter our store in order to keep everyone safe. And if our partners down the street are not doing the same thing, there's really nothing we can do to keep everyone safe. So it's just, the numbers in Platteville specifically are the worst they've ever been. And it seems as though we're trying to make the rules as lax as possible. And especially, I feel like I should have said something earlier when we were talking about the trick-or-treating. I feel like we're voting a month and what, 9 days before the actual holiday. We have no idea what's going to happen in the next 5 weeks. I think that vote was premature and that you should probably vote on that again. That's all I have, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Royal. Next on my screen is Mike Osterholz, but it looks like it's Stephanie, or I'm not sure. There's some hand signaling going on. Stephanie or Mike, are you wanting to speak? There's Mike.
Nope, we don't need to. We're good. We're just listening.
Okay, thank you. Emma Cleveland, you're next.
Thank you. Yep, my name is Emma Cleveland. I live at 925 Ready Drive here in Platteville. And similarly to everyone who's spoken, I am also speaking in favor of a mask ordinance. I was pleased to see today, that Governor Evers extended his mask mandate, but that's really not a guarantee for the future, as Adam said. The CDC, Mayo Clinic, even our physicians out at Southwest Health all agree that masks, along with other preventive measures, such as social distancing and hand washing, are in fact effective. And, many of our local businesses believe in keeping their staff and patrons safe, and I think you've heard that from a couple already. And since face mask mandates went into effect, I personally have felt more comfortable patronizing our local businesses. And this is really truly vital to their survival. It's no secret that small businesses are struggling due to the pandemic. And additionally, these businesses are basically the lifeblood of our community. They employ community members and give much needed services. So I'm posing the question to the council, why are we not doing everything we can to support and protect them? The mandate from the governor is a solid first step. And as they've said, and Austin said, many in our community are doing pretty much everything they can to keep each other safe. But I do fear that there's a group who, for whatever reason, feel that they are above the mandate, that it doesn't apply to them, or it does nothing to help, which is just false. And so this puts our businesses in a tight spot. The lack of enforcement of the state mandate is frustrating. Businesses are unable to do the right thing to keep themselves and patrons safe. And additionally, we've seen, time and time again, patrons becoming hostile and belligerent all across the country when asked to wear a mask or leave. And no business should be in charge of controlling an unfriendly situation. Additionally, I very much appreciated Eric's comment about not being able to see an elderly parent. I have a grandfather who lives in assisted living, and we now have to make an appointment ahead of time in order to see him. We all have to wear masks, and we have to stand 6 feet apart, which is, of course, prohibitive of hugs and other fun things that you get to normally do with your grandparent. It's super horrible, and it's depressing, and it definitely did not have to be this bad. And so with that said, I support and encourage the council to create a local ordinance for wearing masks that includes an enforceable measure that businesses and law enforcement and our Grant County Health Department can impose. There should be no reason for a business owner to stress out about their finances, their employees, their family, and also have to deal with folks who refuse to participate in a collective effort to decrease COVID from our community. So thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Emma. Matt Larson, you are next on my screen.
Hello, my name is Matt Larson. I reside at 1898 Short Lane in Platteville, and I am speaking in favor of a mask mandate. One of the reasons I'm speaking on this is because I have an immunocompromised child who, since March, hasn't been able to go to any of the businesses in Platteville as much as he would like to. He's 19 years old, and he is secluded into our own home for his own safety. Masks help, but as soon as we started to bring him out, Platteville's numbers skyrocketed. My wife is a midwife in the area, and she works with brand new babies, moms that are laboring. She can't be at risk of carrying COVID to these people. So on a personal note, that's my concern. But on a community note, we've touched on this. We want to make sure that our businesses are actually able to survive and maintain. And if we have owners that are allowing people to come in or staff that are not masked up, you're spreading it. And then these businesses have to shut down, or they're spreading it to other businesses that have to close down. So that should be a major focus of your decision tonight is how do we maintain the economy of Platteville? By wearing masks appropriately. Again, as somebody else had mentioned, if you're wearing it around your chin, you're not wearing your mask right. So we need to have some way to enforce this. Make sure that it's covering your nose and mouth. That's a major concern for me. It's a concern for, I'm sure, many of the other people that have spoken tonight. I think the other thing that really bothers me is that since I've lived in Platteville, we've made national news twice, and both times have been negative connotations over the situations of COVID-19. Opening of bars too early, and now with our numbers, putting us as one of the highest rates of infection per capita. That's disappointing to me. I'd rather be known for something a lot more pleasant. So thank you for letting me share.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Next on my screen is Chelsea.
Yes, thank you. Like you said, I'm Chelsea, and I am at 1245 North 4th Street. And
please give your surname too, please.
Roner.
Pardon?
Chelsea Roner. I am married to Eric, who just spoke.
Okay.
And we actually own a business on Main Street. So I am in complete favor of the mandate, and I'm going to be completely transparent that we are considered a high-risk household. So that does kind of play into why I'm in favor of the mandate. But as a community, as Vicki Peterson, I believe her name was, stated, we have always prided ourselves on stepping up and helping others in our community, whether it be helping provide for a family that suffered a house fire, or even giving to organizations such as Badger Camp. I know from a personal standpoint, my husband and I's business donates thousands of dollars every single year to help give back to the community. And we do so willingly simply because it's the right thing to do. Right now, we are in unprecedented times, and we need to remember that willingness to step up and help our neighbors. When we finally get COVID under control, I personally want to be able to look my kids in the eyes and say that I did everything I could to help our neighbors. And just briefly touching on the medical issues with masks. As I stated, we are a high-risk household. My husband has COPD, and yet he is able to wear a mask for 9-10 hours under really hot lights every single day. As was also stated, that this is not a political issue. It's not a constitutional rights issue. It's simply an issue of doing what is right morally to help out our neighbors to get through COVID, especially as we are entering fall and winter. So thank you guys for letting me talk today in favor of this mandate.
Okay, Tristan Hirsch. I believe you're next on my screen.
Hello. I'll say something really short.
Address, please, first.
I live at 245 North Bonson Street in town. And I guess, yeah, like Eric said, like, I can't say much that anyone else hasn't already said, but I am in support of the mask ordinance, or whatever we would call it in town. Every year for the last 4 years, actually, I have been in charge of music and nonprofit events in town through a business called Driftmore Music and Arts Festival. And this is my main point I'm just going to make, is every year we have this event, and it's completely nonprofit. First year we raised $1,000. Second year we raised $10,000. And then last year we raised $15,000. And all that money gets turned around directly back into the community for music events, education, all sorts of things like that. But because of COVID and the lack of people's acceptance to wear the masks and get us back to some sort of normalcy where we can congregate or at least get to be a community actually, versus being stuck inside our houses like we are right now, that isn't happening. And you can see that not only in my business for Driftmore Music and Arts Festival, but you can see it at Pioneer Lanes right now. And that's happening everywhere on Main Street. And it's not unless we're all going to work together and start making these actions actually happening that it's just going to keep persisting. And you're going to lose all those businesses. We're going to have to say goodbye to Platteville staples. And it's all going to be because the community didn't want to support this. And that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Tristan. Jen Casper, you're next on my screen. Jen Casper?
I don't believe I'm asking to speak, Barb.
Oh, okay. I can't see you. And
Thank
so
you, though.
I'm just going at everyone
No,
unless
I
they
did not
tell me.
request speaking. Thank you.
Okay. Kelsey Clark.
Hello. You guys hear me? I live at 245 North Bonson Street, and I also just want to say that I support the mandate. I actually work with Platteville's elderly population as well as some of Dubuque's, and I can say for Platteville, I work with a larger population here, and we've been from day one doing hardcore masks when they're out of their rooms. We've quarantined anyone, from the hospital coming back in for 14 days. And we've been taking things like very, very seriously and a lot of those people have pre-existing conditions, and, we have to be so hard on everything because they can't get COVID-19. And I know that, even for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, 10, 15 minutes a day with their family is so extremely important for their health and their mental health. And we haven't been able to do visits or anything like that because Platteville's so bad. And we've actually it's supposed to be in our schedule now to start doing visits, but I'm not sure how that's going to go. And with the spread that we've been having in our community, it seems really essential that we get on top of this and we kind of pull the reins back in on how things have been going. And I know that some of the businesses that I've been to in Platteville, like even going to Taco Bell drive-through, like I'll pull up and the employee won't be wearing a mask, or the Quick Trip in town, I'll wait in my car because I work with an elderly population to go inside because I don't want to risk being in there around so many people that aren't wearing masks. And that's just me halting my daily life to try to kind of make up for the others in Platteville who aren't taking their part, which I feel like if the elderly population that I work with can do it every day, that everyone else should be able to as well. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Kelsey. Next on my screen, and I am skipping the majority of, Bennett, I'm skipping you because you're press, and I'm skipping staff members. Ben, are you here as an intern tonight, or are you here as the student body president at UW Platteville?
Intern, but what I would like to say is, so Ben Belkey, 385 Division Street. What I would say is that the students are wholeheartedly behind the mask mandate, as well as the Student Senate stands behind what the university said as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Daryl, you're here for the radio station, Queen Bee, I'm assuming. So I'm going to pass you. MJ, you're up next.
That is the initials for Mike and Jennifer North. This is Mike North speaking. I own a business located 10 Keystone Parkway. And I am here, I guess, to present the other side of the story. There's been a lot of discussion so far tonight about why a mask is important and how a mask can help slow the spread of COVID-19. We've certainly heard a lot of moving stories about personal experiences in this regard. But as we look closely at this ordinance that we are discussing passage of, we see nothing in here about the stop of COVID-19, which I think we all can agree on is impossible. We talked about exemptions to the wearing of a mask, and that ultimately gives broad and open-ended opportunity for people to not wear a mask for a number of different reasons, and all as a function of constitutional rights, whether it be a matter of religious or health reasons offered up in HIPAA. I think it's important for us to look at what we're asking our citizenry to ultimately consider, and that is we as a body, and this would be by way of the City Council, and I thank Adam for his very unbiased presentation, are considering taking up a ordinance that ultimately comes with its own set of legal ramifications, the open-ended liability taken on by the city on limited funds. And I think we're also asking our police to become mask police when there's other things that need to be fought in this town. We all know about the seriousness of this situation. And I've heard it said many times tonight that it's important for us to come together as a community and for us to protect our neighbors and to ultimately take up personal responsibility. And I think that's where we need to leave it. The state has ultimately gone far enough to address the issue of a mask. and has appointed different health officials to uphold that. Reality is that for us to go any further puts the city in liability and expends resources that the city does not have. Each business can take the opportunity to enforce a mask in their place of business. And beyond that, each person can make individual decisions to manage their own use of a mask as it's outlined in the state's mask executive order. But for us as a city, I think we've outstepped our bounds to consider such an ordinance and to go so far as to put our police in a place where they're going to have to patrol the streets in defense of a new ordinance that will not stop this disease.
Thank you, Mike. Let's move on to Ashley Oyen.
We are not speaking.
Oh, okay, thank you, Ashley. Next on my screen is a Mona. Mona.
Hey, yeah, it's actually not Mona. It's Silas Langlois. I live at 670 Jefferson Street here in Platteville. So yeah, I guess I had a couple thoughts, and I'm one of the nays. Businesses already have the right to require masks. I mean, early on, Menards it required a mask, and they turned people away. There was people I've went in there before and been told you have to have a mask on, or we're going to ask you to leave. So businesses are already required to do that. And I guess I'm wondering, like Austin was the first one to talk. He's talking about the business right across the street. If they don't require a mask, well, I hope that business is going to speak up here and say what the reasons are behind that. Which I think if businesses aren't going to require, it's going to be to give people a free choice to decide what's right for them. But probably my biggest concern with what he said there was that working with the city and police and health officials to enforce this, it seems like, and I know it's such a small thing. It's a mask. I get it. Like it's so doable. But isn't that kind of just a tiny little bit of a police state where everybody's turning everybody in? If I walk into a no-go zone and I don't have my mask on, oops, somebody's instantly on their phone calling the police or calling a health official to come track me down and make sure I'm doing what I'm told to do. That's my concern there. And also, do our police and health officials even have time to do this? Or are we going to have to hire more police, more health officials? These are all concerns. And I know I emailed some of these to you guys this morning, to the city council here. And yeah, I guess also with everything else going on with the state of public opinion on the police force right now, do we really want our police force showing up to have to confront somebody on such a minor thing? What if that escalates? What if that person decides that he's not gonna follow what the police say, which happens often, maybe not in our city, but other cities? Is that gonna create a different type of escalation that we don't want in our city? Yeah, that's basically all I had to say. I appreciate you guys, and I know you're trying to do what's right, and I get it. It's just a mask, but I'm just concerned that it's just one more step towards now businesses have to not just post. I've already, every business I've seen has it posted pretty much that we require a mask, and they're leaving it up to people to make that decision. They're encouraging it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Silas. Let us go on to Cheryl's iPad. Cheryl's iPad. One more time for Cheryl's iPad. Okay, we're going to move on then. Tim's iPad. Tim?
No, thank you, Barb.
Oh, okay. And the last thing we have here, oh no, I have two more. One, I have just iPhone. iPhone. iPhone, one last time. And the last person I see on my screen is Kirsten Fry. Kirsten?
I have no further comments. Thank you.
Okay. So I think we've been through everyone. I guess now I will take a round robin on council members to ask if you have any need for clarification, questions, comments, suggestions, ideas, opinions. And Eileen, we'll start with you.
I would just maybe like a clarification. The governor's mandate does provide for a method of, I'm going to say, charging someone for not wearing a mask. And I think I would like Doug to explain the difference between what the governor's mandate does for law enforcement versus what our proposed ordinance would do.
Sure. A potential ordinance in the city of Platteville would allow for officers to issue initially warnings and then actually to cite people municipally for violations of the ordinance. Currently, there is no real mechanism or provision in the governor's mask ordinance that allows for enforcement by local law enforcement. What we would do right now is respond to complaints, try and keep the peace, hopefully keep it from escalating at all. And then we in turn would refer our documented violations to the health department and or the district attorney's office. If they see fit to proceed further with those, that is their prerogative. We don't have the ability to cite under the current mask order.
Thank you.
Okay, so the difference is you can issue, the police could issue a citation under a mask ordinance for the city. The police can refer violators to the health department and then potentially to the district attorney under the governor's order. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
previously we, under the safer at home order that the governor had in place until the latter part of May, the city adopted the provisions of that with their own ordinance. And that allowed us to have the ability to potentially cite municipally.
When there was a safer at home order. But
Correct.
now that was overturned. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Isaac, any comments, observations, opinions?
Doug just answered my question as well.
Okay. Nothing else? Jason?
Nope.
Yeah, this question is for Doug. How many interactions have you had in terms of getting calls of people concerned that other people aren't wearing masks? Like, how many have you had to respond to?
I don't know that off the top of my head. There have been a few. And as I've stated all along, this is a hot button issue, as evidenced by the number of people weighing in on both sides of this. And the stance that we've taken as a Platteville PD all along is that we would respond to these complaints so that people had some recourse and, again, hopefully to keep the situations from escalating, because tempers or emotions run high on both sides of the issue.
Do you feel like the number of responses you've had to make to specifically for masks has taken you or has impacted other resources or other duties that officers have had to do in terms of the service, the overall services they're providing?
In terms of being burdensome, I would say no, but I think that a lot of people, I think, recognize that it is not something that local law enforcement is actively dealing with. So that I think that we are very much called as a last resort. I think a lot of times these situations are handled informally.
Okay. And for me, I guess I'm really leaning towards a mask ordinance, just with the continued information on the CDC website. If you go there, has, you know, 3 things that really are consistent, and it's been a consistent message for a while now in terms of wearing a mask, distancing, and good hygiene. And I think one of the things that's been frustrating is that there's been like this mask thing has been isolated away from the other steps. And for me, again, with the recommendations from the CDC and also from the university and some other places, is that if you do all 3 together in combination, that is going to be the best in terms of results. You know, it's not just, you know, a mask is going to either not prevent or anything, or it's going to stop everything. It's not the mask is not like a one and done deal. It's in combination with that other stuff. And I think that's important. And also I continue to hear Dr. Fauci on every update that he has. He continues to reiterate that message as well. He's been consistent with mask wearing, distancing, hygiene. Our public health officials at Grant County, Southwest Health have also been reiterating the same message. Some of the emails that I received that were presenting information in terms of masks not being effective, I did go through, I looked at the links, and a lot of those studies were done back in March and April when everything was really new in terms of the virus. And again, I think we forget that this is a novel virus as well. We have no background information. We have no prior research. We are learning all of this as we go along. So unfortunately, information is going to change, and it's going to change quickly, because as we learn, we're having to make decisions, and we're having to do things as we go along. It's not like the flu where we've had hundreds of years of data, and you know, we have research, and we know, you know, we have a vaccine for it. We know what works, and we know the risks. Again, with this being a novel virus, we don't know what long-term risks are. You know, maybe, you know, people are asymptomatic now, but who knows, 10 years down the road, are they going to have, you know, are there going to be other things coming out? So that's an unknown as well with a novel virus. So I think, again, a lot of, you know, a lot of those links did show that, like, at first back in, you know, March, April, the WHO, the CDC, they were a little wishy-washy on the mask thing until more research was done, more was looked into this. And now, you know, since, you know, the last couple of months, you know, August into September, the message has been really consistent. And there's also been consistent messages from other places too. As I said, Dr. Fauci, I've watched his briefings, and he's been consistent in terms of his recommendations. Again, the combination of wearing a mask, distancing, and also personal hygiene. And I know it was mentioned earlier today about when we were having the trick or treat discussion about how, you know, as parents, it's hard to have those disappointing conversations with your kids. You know, I'm tired of having them too. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had to have those conversations with my kids during this time. And, you know, anything that I can do and my family can do to again, we're not going to stop this until there's a vaccine. And even then, you know, that's not going to cure it. There's still going to be a risk out there. However, if we can do what we can to mitigate things and, you know, keep that from spreading things, you know, I guess I'm for myself, I've done what I can do, but then when I see other people kind of counteracting that, that's frustrating. I'll have to keep on having those difficult conversations, and that's kind of where I stand.
Thank you, Jason. Kathy, comments, observations, opinions?
Yeah, what is the, one of my concerns is that we're talking about a community within a county. Is there any movement on the county level to implement an ordinance like this? Because I feel it's going to be a challenge to put just, our community within its city limits in a little bottle and not expect anything to flow out or flow in. So as far as I know, the county does not are not having a discussion about implementing anything county-wide. So one of my concerns is how isolated are we making the community with enacting an ordinance?
I will, let me just comment that and give a shout out to the Platteville Journal. I saw Steve was here. The Platteville Journal Facebook page posts COVID cases in the county by census tract. And currently, as of today's post 6 hours ago, there were 846 cases in the total county, with half of them in Platteville, 404. The other two communities that seem to be hotter spots, if you want to call it that, are Hazel Green, Dickeyville, that kind of Cuba City, Dickeyville, Hazel Green, Keeler. So it seems that the majority of cases are in the southern part. I don't know if anybody else is talking about face mask resolution. I don't know about the county talking about, but I do know that if you look at those statistics relative to census tracts, it's available on a daily basis from the Platteville Journal. The other thing I would say is that a lot of our regional shopping stores are requiring masks and are checking at the door. So even if I don't have to wear one because I live in Glen Haven, I may have to wear one when I come to Menards. So, and really, I think the other thing we have to remember is that masks are not to protect you. Masks are to protect others from you. You're really working to protect someone else, not yourself, when you wear a mask. So Kathy, that's the answer I know.
Yeah.
Adam, have you heard on your county calls anything else?
I'm aware that Lancaster was looking at, I believe last night they passed a resolution similar to ours requiring it within their municipal buildings. That's the only one I'm really aware of that has taken any kind of formal stance outside of us. The county, I have not heard anything coming from the county level that they're looking at kind of a resolution or ordinance per se to that effect.
And I also know that next week it will be on the Lancaster Common Council agenda. I heard that on the radio this morning, that they said last night they passed this whatever resolution, but it's on something else is on next week or the next meeting's agenda. I don't think that's next week. It might be next month for all I know.
Okay, Barb, just one more comment. I have heard from several people that are still concerned about the fact that they cannot wear masks and what would happen to those people if they're not allowed to come into our businesses or interact with the community. And I've had several calls from individuals who are not able to wear a mask for one reason or another.
Okay. Robin, comments, observations, opinions?
A few things. I want to re-emphasize that comment that the mask is to protect others from us. And I do think that we as a city who has the largest number of cases have an obligation to our visitors to protect them. They aren't mask wearers when we have a higher propensity to be spreading it amongst ourselves. But that wasn't my main point. So I have heard a couple comments, and I don't think it really is really covered with our ordinance of holding businesses accountable, aside from perhaps ticketing their individual employees, which obviously would put heat on the business. Am I wrong if I'm missing something? And then I was thinking about the fact that Whitewater is ahead of us on this ordinance and comparing us to other communities like we often do, River Falls, Menominee, La Crosse, other similar communities. And I think we are unique in that we draw a huge student population from Milwaukee, Chicago metropolitan areas, and that we do have a higher propensity of bringing in those cases to our community. There's been reference to the health department being the enforcers for what's there currently, but I've also heard secondhand, so I don't know if someone can confirm, that they really don't have any time on their hands, very short staffed, and that they're making a point of doing the contact call and contact tracing. So I don't know if there's anything, Doug, if there's any confirmation that they're able to follow through on concerns and complaints, if any of that has moved forward.
The last information, or the only information I've got from Jeff Kindry at the health department, is that the DA would probably be the best recourse for potential charging under the current mask order, and that the DA may only accept referrals from law enforcement. So it may be a moot point if the health department has adequate staffing or not.
Okay.
And you then asked about who would get cited if a business was, we have made a point or a practice of citing licensed establishments like bars, the owners of the bars, for activities of some of their employees, and or business practices that would cause them to violate either state laws or ordinances of the city. So that I would think that we could, if a business was not observing the mask ordinance, that would be something that we could mimic.
Okay, and that maybe could be addressed with the range of those dollar amounts within that ordinance.
What is it?
If you look at, yeah, I can address that.
Sure.
So I think
Adam, are you trying to talk?
I am, yeah. I was telling him to mute so that, to Robin's point, the way the current draft of the ordinance reads right now under the penalty section, it does say that any person violating the ordinance and any owner, if the owner controls day-to-day operations or operator of a building open to the public that does not enforce this section, can be cited. So essentially you can cite the individual, you can cite the owner, or you can cite the businesses itself. So I think the way it currently reads, it kind of allows the police department to have discretion to, as Doug was kind of indicating, you can either go after the individual, the owner, or the business itself.
Okay, thanks. It's been a little bit since I read it thoroughly. So, and I guess one new suggestion I might want to throw out there, if we needed to increase our our police department staffing to address this issue. Might we put a little nudge towards the university to support some community service officer positions temporarily somehow to address this? Is that an option?
Yeah,
Doug?
took me a minute to unmute there, sorry. Everything's on the table with the 2020 with COVID. Is that gonna be necessary? I would hope not, but like I said, everything's open for discussion.
Okay, so just to the point that you may feel like you have some resources you could pursue if you were feeling crunched.
I would think so.
Okay. And then I would just note the timeline that was discussed for us to take action and for this to take effect, and that I think time is of the essence. And that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Ken, comments, questions, opinions?
Well, I asked my question of the city manager how soon this ordinance could be put into effect. So I believe we need to take a look at what the numbers, what the situation is like, whether it be in end of October as far as the numbers. If the numbers have not come down, then we need to proceed with the mask ordinance. I believe that this needs to be the path. I don't like going into businesses that people are there not wearing a mask, and so I'll go to a business where the people are wearing masks. Thank you.
Okay, and the only person who hasn't stated an opinion, or what, maybe I have, I don't know, is me. I would like to believe that we are a community together and that there is no reason to have an ordinance, because I would like to believe that people wouldn't go into businesses and berate employees because they're asked to put on a mask or they're required. I would hope that we wouldn't have people who go into a business who have to put on a mask, rolling their eyes, stamping their feet, and acting, frankly, like a child because they have to do this simple thing about putting on a mask. So, you know, I understand not everybody can wear a mask. I understand there are exceptions. I understand that people see this as a violation of their civil liberty. I understand that people see this as a political issue. I don't understand why. I just understand that they do. So, Adam, you have heard some information about clarifications within the mask ordinance, timelines and those things. So I guess at this point, we'll need you to bring that information to us before we can decide whether, how and when we might advance this. Thank you, Ken, for your idea that now that the mask mandate from the state has been extended, we might want to take and see what happens in the next couple of weeks. Adam didn't mention, but he and Eileen and I were today on a conversation with the university talking about their testing and their, I mean, it's really unfortunate that we as a community cannot adopt the 3 W's that they have adopted. And I saw Joanne Wilson on here earlier. It's easy, wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Maybe we should have signs put up all over town. Because I think if we did that, these discussions would be pretty much not necessary. So Adam, if you could bring that stuff back, and then we'll see where we go from there. Does that sound reasonable to council members? If so, give me a thumbs up. Only 2 thumbs ups?
Can you repeat that again?
I said Adam is going to look at the wording. There was some question on wording. There's some question on how to implement, what kind of delays, what kind of notices. He's going to get that information and he's going to bring it back so that we know what kind of action we can take and when.
Okay, and that'll be for the next meeting?
That would be for the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I'll try to dig into. One is I think there needs to be some further clarification now with the extension of the governor's order. There's a couple of questions I have about enforcement and whether our, the current draft that the ordinance is in, is it trumped? Is it not? Is it kind of in conjunction? So I think I'm going to ask, I'll reach out to Bill Cole to get some further clarification on that. I think also to Ken's point, if there's a public hearing, what's the timeline with that? If we don't do the public hearing, what's the timeline? So I'll get all that information, and I believe the next meeting that would either be potentially there's the special meeting on October 6th that could be a part of, or it would be the regular meeting on the 13th. So that'll be a conversation, obviously, with council leadership, with Barb and Eileen, to see as soon as I can get that information when that would be. So.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you for your courteous comments and for going through our little round robin like we do. And yeah, the 3 W's. Please wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Okay, let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the Inclusivity, Diversity, and Equity Update. Adam.
Okay. So again, as the city of Platteville established as a 2020 strategic priority to kind of begin inclusivity conversations, one of the steps we've obviously done is now officially adopted a working inclusivity, diversity, and equity statement. So one of the main tasks that came out of that statement was to adopt a inclusivity, diversity task force. So that is where Council President Barb Doss has been reviewing what other municipalities have been doing to create that. And so we've come up with a couple of different themes looking into that, where what's been considered is to have 10 diverse citizens of the city of Platteville or employees of businesses located within the city of Platteville, with a chair selected from those 10 persons. There would be 2 council members that would be on this committee. It'd be the city manager and 1 additional city staff. There would have to be kind of the notation of who would be a recorder, a facilitator, and a note taker for this committee. Looking at having a minimum of them meeting monthly. The meetings would be organized as open meetings and under the open meetings law. There'd obviously be a press release announcing the formation with requests for applications and or nominations. And then the goal, again, was just to kind of look at what truly is inclusive and what that means. So making sure that we're focusing on all groups, ethnicities, sex, religion, creed, mental abilities, language, economic status, etc. So some of the questions that still kind of remain, or that we've been looking at, is, what do we use to evaluate or choose from applicants or nominees? For instance, if there's more than 10 individuals who would want to be on this committee, does the city go out and actively try to recruit 2 or 3 members, or do we, wait to see what kind of the feedback is? What tools will be used, such that the task force becomes a team that can have an open and honest conversation? Again, a lot of the feedback we heard in our comments was that this particular committee or group should be one that is not so based in kind of the parley pro and procedures of our kind of more strict, council and planning commission, to be kind of more of an open committee that allows for, back and forth dialogue and doesn't have to have the, pointing to the chair and et cetera. And then obviously, how will the task force then use the recently adopted working statement and continue to update that? And then what other questions are not identified? So I guess that's kind of the first topic. I don't know if you want to start there and see what people's thoughts or concerns are, and then we'll go on to the other ones.
Sure. Eileen.
I guess I don't really have anything to add to what has already been stated. I think The idea of having 10 to 12 people, I think that's fine. I think a recorder is a good idea. Having some staff and Adam is a good idea. I don't really know yet. I guess I'm open to suggestions as far as how to recruit the members. I don't have an answer for that.
Okay. Isaac,
No more questions at this time.
Jason,
Nothing at this time.
Kathy,
Nothing right now, thank you.
Robin,
Nothing at the moment, thank you.
Ken,
No additions. I want to move on to 2.
okay, Adam, we're moving on.
Okay, so that's something we'll continue to kind of draft and put into more of a finalized status and get opinions. So number 2, obviously, is I've been working with Jamie Collins with the Southwest Rainbow Alliance. And what we're looking at doing is having a potential LGBTQIA multimedia presentation being done. That would be for the department heads, and also the council members would be invited to that. So the presentation basically is 2 60-minute Zoom sessions and touches on a variety of topics. So I'm working with Jamie right now on scheduling a time for this to occur potentially during the months of October, November, and December. So just keep your kind of eyes out for some dates that I have to confirm. Jamie right now is overseas, so when Jamie returns, I'll be working with Jamie on kind of finalizing some of those dates. Any questions on that?
Eileen?
No questions.
Isaac?
No questions.
Jason?
No questions, just wanting to know the dates when they're set.
Okay. Kathy?
No questions.
Robin?
No questions.
Ken?
Nothing.
Okay. Adam, moving on to number 3.
Yeah, so the number 3 is we've talked in a couple of meetings about what is called, it's the Racial Equity Alliance. It's a local and regional government alliance on race and equity. So this is something that Jessie, and a lot of the conversations she's had with library directors, and I've had a couple with different city managers, they become a core member of this organization, in which it has a cost of $1,000 annually. And what it gives members access to is basically they have monthly membership meetings, webinars, and member-only tools and resources, access to member-only working groups, and just a lot of different services. And where they're basically, it's the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, or GAR. It's a national network of government working to achieve racial equity and advance opportunities for all. So this is something that I'm starting to look at how I can position this into potentially the city manager's budget, whether that's part of the kind of contingency account that's out there, or options that then would allow kind of both staff and potentially the council some different tools and training in regards to kind of race and equity.
Okay. Questions, Eileen?
No questions.
Isaac?
No questions.
Jason?
No questions, but I would encourage us to look at being a member. I think this is a good step.
Kathy?
Just one question, Adam, is does the League of Wisconsin Municipalities have anything like this that is included with the membership for the league?
They're working towards that. They don't have anything official that I'm 100% aware of, but I know in a lot of the meetings and conversations, that's something that they definitely are going to be looking at developing over the next year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Robin?
I just want to encourage us to pursue. I have to also apologize. I had to take a work call for a moment here, so I am slightly distracted, but I do want us to pursue what was presented.
Okay. Ken?
No addition. I'm looking forward to number 2 there.
Okay. And last, number 4?
Yeah, so this is something that I am part of with the WCMA. They have kind of region calls And one of them is the village of McFarland is going to be bringing a group that they've been working with out of Madison that does kind of a variety of diversity training. So after getting a chance to kind of listen to that, I'll be reporting back to the council kind of what options and alternatives that they might provide. So I'll have some further information on that. And then I guess the last thing is just to kind of open up an opportunity for any council members that want to provide any feedback, questions, or comments.
Okay, Eileen, any feedback, comments, questions on any of this?
None at this time, no.
Okay, Isaac,
None at this time.
Jason.
The only thing that I would add is I think it's great that you're looking at and reaching out for trainings. And I would also add that, you know, looking at the resources that we have here in our community as well in terms of trainings that could be offered by the university or other community groups, just to kind of get our local people involved too in this as well.
Okay, Kathy.
Nothing else.
Robin?
I was wondering if Adam, did you say have any employees from the city, aside from Jesse, I heard that, but have you had just general staffing requests come up towards you regarding this topic on an individual basis?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of them obviously is, I think I saw Eric's on the call here. Specifically, you know, the museum has been looking at doing some programming. I think you probably noticed in some of the weekly kind of communications. They're doing a series on a couple of different, you know, race-related conversations. And obviously, as I don't know if I think I see Eric, so that's kind of one of them. But obviously, we have department head meetings that occur after all of our you know, council meetings the next day. So I've been encouraging staff. You know, there's a lot of things that we're all kind of looking into as potential kind of trainings and opportunities. So it's something that, yeah, we continue to kind of be open on and listen for feedback on any type of resources that they hear from.
So I think I just want to emphasize to any staff that might, you know, somehow chime in or listen in on these conversations. And I would just encourage an upward pressure as well to let us know what they're asking for or what looks good. But to give pressure to you and other department heads on an individual basis that this is a good thing for everyone to be pursuing on their own professional development aspect and as citizens, active members of people making decisions in the community. I'd put that out there. And then if I may, Barb, I am really sorry that I had to take that phone call, but I missed the very end of, as we were wrapping up the mask conversation. And when we were talking about the next meeting, having Adam bring details to us, I am hoping that we are at least putting that on an action item as well. I was a little disappointed to not see it as the action item tonight and wondering what power we might have to have perhaps nudged that into action. But could you speak to the likeliness that that would be put on regardless as an action item? Because I feel we were already gambling a bit that the mandate might run out before our next meeting, but with it being the second renewal, I think our odds of it being stopped have increased now. So I don't know if someone can speak to that point. I'm out of place, sorry.
You have that, Adam, you've heard, and so we'll address that when we see what kind of timelines and things we have to abide by. Questions, comments, or anything now left on inclusivity, diversity, and equity updates?
How is the public going to be informed? How are they going to be informed as far as our meetings? We get information as far as meeting for the council, but how does that get out to the public so they know what's going on and are learning about what we're studying?
Okay. Adam, do you want to speak to your and Jody's plan here?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of different ways, we plan to attack that. So one is obviously, once we get kind of the finalization of what we consider the inclusivity and diversity task force to be, we'll obviously start publicizing that information. Jody and I are working on right now creating a page on the city's website that now is specifically about, the inclusivity, diversity, and equity statement. So our plan is to start putting out kind of updates on that part of the page, and then putting that in the news tracker, as well as, Facebook and various other, information there. I think it's under the city manager right now, is where that page is. So we'll be kind of putting more, more information out there now that the statement's been finalized, and looking to kind of put that information out there. I know Steve Prestegard with the Platteville Journal asked for a copy of the statement, so I did send him that. So I have a feeling that'll kind of appear in the paper, and we're going to continue to kind of make sure we get updates that get out to the various news sources.
So it's going to go in 53818.
That's what, yep, that's another area we've looked at putting information in there as well, yes.
And I agree with Robin. I expected the mask thing to be on the agenda night for action. I'm out of order, but I want to agree with Robin.
Okay.
I was surprised.
Okay, I think that ends our discussion on inclusivity, diversity, and equity. And so I believe that's the last of our information and discussion items. Now we're going to move into a work session where we're going to discuss the long-range financial management plan. So Nicola, it's Nicola and David, I believe, that we're going to hear from.
Yes, hopefully David is hanging in there after our long series of discussions there. And I see he's just unmuted his video. So hi, David, and thanks for being here. And we've been working hard to update the long-range financial plan. We are also in the middle of budget planning. So we've been doing both of those things together. And I'm just going to hand over to David, who is going to present the financial plan to us.
Does everybody have it in front of them, Nicola, or do I need to do something by sharing my screen?
Well, all of the council members have seen it, but there are members of the public on the call, so we could do a screen share if you would like to.
I can do that.
Jody, is that enabled? Okay.
Okay. All right. So last year, I think I got on about this time too, and I was told that there was a hard stop for somebody. So hopefully I don't lose out to that hard stop again. But as far as the agenda, we're going to go through some of the background information on the long range plan and some goals. We're going to go through some highlights of the city's current bond rating. We'll go over some observations and comparisons to the prior plan. We'll go through the capital projects plan and the debt plan. We'll talk about the general fund projections, and then wrap it up with how that impacts the levy limits, and then kind of an overall project or projected tax rate impact, and then some summary comments. This schedule actually is a city schedule that has made it in for a second year. I believe the prior administrator developed this one, but it's kind of shows you your budget that impacts really the financial management plan. There's the operating budget, which is mostly your general fund, your capital improvement plan, your debt service, and your TIF districts. And there's a couple comments to the right that kind of share what those pieces are about. The next page is the architecture of the financial management plan. So really where we get started and what Nicola shares with us first is the 5-year CIP, the capital improvement plan. And that really drives the capital projects fund as well as future debt service. The other pieces of the financial management plan is the general fund, the taxi bus fund, capital projects, as I said before, and the debt service. Those are really the funds that have the tax levy on and really drive the forecast as far as the tax levy and rate forecast. We use equalized value to do the rate analysis, as using equalized gives you more of a comparability from year to year. As you know, the assessed ratio changes and it's not easy to compare year to year with that. Out of the forecast comes, impact on levy limits, impact on your fund balance, as well as expenditure restraint. The goals of the financial management plan is to provide an estimate of future tax levy requirements and associated tax rates based on a set of assumptions. And some of those assumptions are set by some of the things that we do, but we're always sharing information with staff and tweaking those as we go. The financial management plan should support the political decision-making process regarding service levels, capital spending, and financial management. Obviously, when you're doing your capital budget, you need to fit things into what you have as far as your tax levy that you have available, as well as what you're currently willing to borrow for. So some of your decision-making with capital and debt is kind of driven by some of the policies you've set, as well as the levy limit drives somewhat your operating decisions. The financial management plan also helps you identify potential financial pressure points in advance of their occurrence. Really where this comes into play is when you're looking kind of at things like the levy limit. And you'll see that right now with the way that the forecast shows that you're well within that at least gives you a look out in the future to see, do we have something that's coming up that might cause an issue? And this would be able to give you that identification so that you can start to think about it. So the next section is on the rating. S&P is your rating agency, and they basically have a framework for how they rate you. You can see the percentages down the left side. Institutional framework, really in the state of Wisconsin, institutional framework, all municipalities are rated an A in Wisconsin, and it's basically because your revenues are tax related and they're subject to caps. So there's things that are restrictive there. The Wisconsin expenditures are flexible. Revenues and expenditures are predictable. And the other thing that goes into that part is TID. And they kind of look at how TID affects the city and whether or not, an economic downturn could really affect that part of the rating. The economy, the local economy, they look at quite a bit. They're always asking questions about what you have going on economically. As far as management, they're looking at what your policies are. One thing that they did note in your financial or in your rating is that you're doing a back-to-back update of the financial management plan, and they did note that. Otherwise, they look at some of your financial measurements. Liquidity is always a big thing. Your budgetary performance. And as you'll see on the next page, budgetary flexibility is something that they are really impressed with the city. The last one is debt and contingent liabilities. What's your direct debt kind of statistics? How fast you pay off things, that kind of things go into that. So as far as the rating, it was done for the July 9th. It's a July 9th rating report. It was based at that point off the 2019 draft financials. You were affirmed a AA- stable, which is great for a city your size, and some of the things that they talk about with comparables that you have some things going for you that get you into that group. The strengths are very strong budgetary flexibility, meaning that typically you have room in your budget that if something happens that you're able to cover that, and it also gives you some monies that you're able to move towards capital if you have excess and whatnot. So they're really like the budget flexibility. Your liquidity is good. It means you have cash on hand to pay your bills. Your strong management and good financial policies are in place. and your reserves are very good. I think you have a policy of 20% of your next year's expenditures, and I believe that you're well above that at this point, and they want to see that continue. As far as what they have you at adequate is for budgetary performance, they lowered you from very strong, noting that there was an operating deficit in the general fund after transfers. And then, like I said, institutional framework, everybody is adequate in the state of Wisconsin. As far as what they consider you weak at is the economy, that some of the per capita information is below the median, and also that you have a weak debt and contingent liability position, meaning that debt as a percentage of expenditures is a little high, and your net direct debt is also a little high. So,
What do we go from very strong to what?
Adequate, yes.
Adequate. Oh,
Adequate.
I thought it might be strong.
Well, I don't think they would have brought that up if it was just strong. So,
Is there a category of strong?
they do have strong. As you can tell in this section up here under strengths, they have very strongs and strongs. Okay.
Adequate is
that's kind of one of those so-sos, right?
step lower. Okay.
Yep. So, and it's something that, Nicola, do you have something that you could share that talks about why that was different than the prior year?
Actually, I was just going to try to look into it, but I didn't get there fast enough. I would say that when S&P looks at our financial results, they look at the budget before a very significant revenue source, which is the payment in lieu of taxes that the city receives from the utility. So in other words, if the utility was a privately held utility, it would pay taxes. And so in lieu of that, the city water and sewer utility pays the equivalent of a tax, a property tax, to the city. And so when we budget with that payment as part of our revenue sources. But the way it's presented in our audited financials means that it's what we call below the line. And S&P does not take that into consideration when they're evaluating our budgetary performance. And so that's why they are seeing that we have a deficit. So there's no deficit from the city's perspective, but there is when S&P looks at our audited financials.
Well, the other thing I was wondering is, doesn't it depend on what you have set aside in unassigned fund balance as well, with what you're transferring to capital that could affect that deficit as well?
That does come into play, but
Yeah.
it will be covered by that utility property tax payment.
Yeah, so when I'm looking at the deficit, the line they're looking at after transfers is a deficit of 154,000, and you just happen to have a fairly significant transfer out to other funds last year of about 560,000. So, the thing is the city has a policy that you'll have so much fund balance, and I know that you do an amendment or a resolution at the end of the year setting aside of money. And so, when you determine what that amount is, that can potentially change that number. So I think that had somewhat to do with it, is that you had your calculation on what the transfer out to capital should be just happened to be something that it dinged a little bit of fund balance, but your fund balance policy is still good. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Am I recalling, is that fund balance was it a little higher than usual beforehand because of the sale of like the senior center, et cetera? Was that funds that were being reserved for the city hall renovation and we moved them, or was that not the case?
No, that's absolutely the case. In fact, I was going to mention it, but I didn't want to lose everybody. I know it's getting late, but partly the reason that that transfer was a little higher was because we utilized some park impact fees, I think it was, and we also utilized that senior center, and we utilized an ambulance reserve that had not been, that was not needed for ambulance anymore because we don't have an ambulance service within the city finances. And so we utilized some of those extra fund sources, but they were all residing in the general fund. So when we moved them to help fund capital projects, it caused a larger transfer. So I'm very impressed, Robin, that you even remembered that.
Do we have no more ambulance fund?
No, because we did do, as you know, we don't have an ambulance service anymore. And there had been over many years a fund that was accumulating to fund the purchase of a new ambulance. And because we did not need to purchase a new ambulance, we allocated that back to the city and the townships.
Well, we still are paying money to the health center, about 70,000 a year.
So we have an ambulance fee on the utility bill, I think you remember, which covers the cost of the ambulance service that we pay to Southwest Health.
Yeah, that's something that's now paid by the citizens.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we could have used that money to help pay for the ambulance money.
Well, it was not at the level that we would have needed to be able to sustain an ambulance service.
But we're still paying a subsidy though.
Yeah, I think we could have a conversation about this later, Ken, if you'd like, but I don't want to hold everybody else up on the financial plan.
Okay, David.
Okay. So on this page, what could change the rating up? It said, city key indicators were to improve to substantially to levels compared to higher rated peers, while maintaining what your strong and very strong budgetary flexibility and liquidity. And what could change your rating down would be is that you don't maintain balanced operations, and what would happen is you'd result in maybe some substantially decreased budget flexibility. So that budget flexibility that you have built in is really something that they really like, and holding yourself up at that level is something that you're going to want to keep doing.
And I would just also add to that because of how the city has structured its funding for CIP over the last several years, we do have these transfers out of the general fund each year, and that does have an impact on the way S&P reviews our financial performance. There are alternative methods to fund CIP that Adam and I have been talking about, where we would, instead of accumulating this in an unassigned reserve for the city, we could just budget right directly into the CIP fund, and so then we wouldn't have to do these transfers.
Yep, I agree. Taking away one of my recommendations at the end, aren't you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So why is a rating important? As you can see from this chart, and this is something that I put together in July when we were putting together the plan, is each line is a different rating. And as you can tell, you definitely don't want to be a BAA, but you start to lose about 20, I think it's about 23 basis points, which is 0.23%. Between that AA and that A. So I think it's really important that, when you're looking at this financial management plan and you're doing your budget after this, that you're taking in considerations what you need to keep doing to keep your rating up. And so the one thing you don't want to do is to start to nip away at things that they say that you're really good at.
So BAA is at the bottom?
That's that purple line way up here where the interest rates are really high.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, so AAA is the low interest rates down here, and then the AA is the red. A is the green, and then BAA is something we don't ever want to see you have.
I had a little trouble reading this. I'm not colorblind, but I got mixed up BAA and AAA.
Yeah.
My recommendation is simply put those letters right along the line and throw out that little table you have.
Okay. So as far as like the difference, you know, this is actually a year ago sale, but applying those rates from that last table, you know, if you hadn't maintained your rating, you would have lost about $26,000 in interest savings that you had because you were a AA. So, you know, it makes a difference to keep your rating up, because it does end up giving you better financing costs. So as far as historic issues with the plan, in the past, and you know this just from, you know, back a couple of years ago when Dawn did the first financial management plan, is that you had a lot of 10-year debt with a lot of balloons, and most of it was the underwriter that you were using was trying to avoid competitive bidding at that time. One of the things that also came out of that is because you had some fairly decent sized projects, including projects in TID 6, that 10-year debt was really structured kind of weird, where there were some really large payments that were towards the end of the 10 years and caused some structuring issues that was fixed. As you can see on the last point, I'll skip the third one for now, but you know, basically because of that issue, you changed your budget, the way you budget in the 17-18 budgets, and you now have a new budget document with a long-range financial plan that helps you avoid that kind of a condition as well. The other thing that was occurring in the past is that there's an adjustment on the levy limit sheet called Adjustment E, which is related to your general obligation debt. And the city back, you know, a few years ago didn't utilize that line at all. So you were paying for all your operating and your debt payments through the operating portion of the levy limit. And without knowing that you could have used, you know, you could have been raising your services, you know, having dollars to pay for your services, you weren't utilizing that debt adjustment, and it was really holding you back from getting some of the things done that you wanted to get done. So since the 2019 update, basically your 2020 projected in the plan ended up being exactly what you had in the update for financial management plan compared to the budget. In 2021, the plan had projected $1,682,000. It's now projected at $1,587,000. I think that was mainly a result of some debt structuring, but I think also there was maybe a delay in the use of tax levy support for TIF 6. And that, you know, going along with TIF 6, when we finally got to the point where we started to look at whether we were going to have a levy support, the amount that, you know, you are going to support it now is starting in 2021 at $60,000, and that amount varies from $60,000 to $265,000 from 2022 to 2028. But as I said, you know, with TIF 6 having a little better financial growth, that amount that it was needed to actually levy support that TIF district has come down, and there's a slide a little later on that shows how much that reduction in levy support is. So the main thing is if TIF 6 continues to have some success and some financial growth, levy support will become less and less of a need. As far as other observations, the overall tax levy compared to the 19 plan was actually down about $285,000, most of that coming out of the general fund projection. As I said before, the debt service fund plan agreed to the budget. You had some decrease in what was in the plan for the capital, what was levied for the capital, and then there's just a slight decrease in the taxi fund. As far as your equalized value, this is just a graph that kind of shows you where your TID closures are coming into play. We're using, I think, a fairly fairly conservative growth rate of about 1% otherwise. But when you see those closures, you can kind of see where you have the ability to take advantage of those years to maybe increase some of your services because you'll have some extra tax levy that comes on. But it's actually looking at those gives you chances to see, what can we do in those years, and that one right there comes into play fairly close to where you have your projected fire building. So that little bump kind of helps in some of the structuring, and we'll talk about the impact of the fire station on the tax rate when we get to that slide. This is what's called the base case, and what that means is that I think this is as of just after getting done with the borrowings, this is how much we had for principal and interest payments, and the effect of the equalized value, which I believe should be the most recent one, gives you your total principal and interest. Then there's the red amount, which is our amounts that are paid for from other funding sources, whether they're TIDs or utilities. And then you're down to your net debt service. Like I said, we use the equalized value to have comparability, and you can see the equalized value for 2021 is $2.50. It kind of hangs there for a little bit. There's some old existing issues that were out there that kind of bumped that 2023 number up, but then you have a decent flow flexibility on that levy. Off to the right, we also put down the TID 6 support that is in the plan at this time. After looking at how we could structure that in, it is included in the information to the left. So, you can see where you had some increases in that levy rate, and we're able to put that TIF support in without really hitting that tax rate too hard.
What about 2026?
2026, you have a fairly significant drop in
7.48%.
What's that?
You got 7.48% change in equalized value projection.
Yeah, that's a year where a TIF district closes. So if we go back to that TIF district graph, that's when TIF 5 is projected to close.
Okay.
Okay. As far as the CIP, once again, this is a chart that the city provided us last year. You have a bunch of different funding sources for the CIP plan. There's some operating budget that comes in. There's some unspent funds from previous years. That's some of the transfers that we've talked about using the ambulance monies or some of the budgetary flexibility. There's some reserves that are used, and that because of the repayment of advances from TID 7, that also freed up some money that allowed you to use that for CIP. Did you want to add something to that, Nicola? This is one of your charts, so I just want to make sure you had a chance.
No, just like you said, to emphasize that because the TID 7 with the sharing from TID 5 has been able to repay the advances that it received from the general fund, that helps to replenish our unassigned fund balance.
Right. So when you have advances when the general fund advances money to the TIDs, what it does is it moves fund balance from the unassigned line, which is where we take it from to fund the capital improvements, and puts it on a line called non-spendable. And what non-spendable means is the cash went out the door already. And so when the TID uses the general fund's money, it's not there for the general fund. So when that TID repaid that advance, it comes back out of that non-spendable line and goes back to the unassigned, which really frees up cash for you to use.
And just to let the council know that there's definitely a significant difference between using advances to help out TIDs versus using levy dollars. And I don't think we'll get into that right now, but anytime you guys have questions of me on that subject, we can get into that, and we can talk about it during our budget process as well.
And just as a quick, just to add on to that, just a real quick thing is rating agencies do not like advances. And so like Nicola said, using the tax levy support and then finding a way to in the end repay that tax levy support is a better way, because then the rating agencies aren't seeing that you're sucking the general fund out of cash. So the capital projects fund, we actually have a kind of a unique way that we show this. We built this last year. Nicola and I kind of battled through this one and figured out how we wanted to use this. The way this happens is the city provides us with a capital projects list. We put it through with all the funding sources. So Nicola has identified all the funding sources that can pay for these projects. In fact, if you looked at the capital projects list that I have, it has a project, and that project might have 3 different funding sources. But what I have it doing is I have it pulling together, showing all the funding sources that we may have in a year. And then basically the project costs come into the expenditure part. And there are certain funding sources that are not actually available. And what I mean by that is you have a policy right now that says that you're not going to borrow any more than you pay off. Well, unfortunately, the capital improvements plan right now shows projects more than you actually have the ability to fund. That's not necessarily the way that most municipalities do that. A lot of times they'll actually maneuver their projects to fit that. So it's something you could consider in the future, where you actually budget, where you know how much money that you're going to use. We're hoping that in the next few years, maybe next 5 years, that maybe you don't have to live by that policy of that you're only going to borrow what you pay off, because I think we're getting to the point where you're starting to come out of that. And it's something that, you know, obviously as we go forward with a financial management plan, you might be able to do more projects because things are starting to loosen up. The TID debt's getting paid off, and things are becoming a little more flexible. But to show you how much was over budgeted on the project, the borrowed projects, there's a line right here in the middle that has the unfunded portion. And so those amounts really just flow down to, you know, after we get down to the bottom here, shows really a deficit spend because we're not actually funding those, which means we're probably not even doing those projects. So what we've kind of done is come up with a way to show you the unfunded amounts over the 5 years. And it's about $1 million that we want to do, but we don't have the ability to do it through our current borrowing plan.
And I would just add to that, actually, that you know, the 5-year CIP plan is an area of growth for us as a city. Traditionally or historically, the first year of the 5-year plan has been very closely attended to by staff and the council during the budget process, but then the following years are not as closely monitored. And that's something that David was mentioning that we are going to want to address in the future. But I would say that this year in the budget cycle, you'll see actually some higher numbers for projects that are on our schedule for street reconstruction and utility infrastructure that we are not able to attend to because of financial constraint right now.
The other thing that
2022, I have a question. That 550,000, what does that represent? There's nothing else for any other year. Intergovernmental revenue.
I see the number.
Grant that you must be getting, and I have to open up your financial management plan to actually pull that up.
2022.
Yep.
550,000. What does that number represent? It's nothing for the other years.
Yeah, it's a project where you're getting you're anticipating getting a grant, and let me see if I can pull up what that project is, unless you can beat me to it, Nicola.
Is that the highway safety grant?
151, yeah.
Highway safety grant, 151.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well,
We also get other intergovernmental revenues as well, don't we?
Not for capital projects, though.
Yeah, we're just looking at capital projects right now, and the highway safety plan, we're in the design phase right now, and I had thought that would be reflected in 2021, but David, were you able to find what that was?
And that's showing up in 22, huh? Okay. DOT STP grant
Highway safety
for
improvement.
Pitt Street. Water to Second.
So that must be something that's in our 2022.
So I mean, the total cost of the project is like $1.1 million, and you've got it split in half. Some of it is bonds and some of it is grant.
May I?
So
Yeah.
is the grant applied for already? Or this,
Howard?
this is a wish list?
I applied for it and it was turned down, and for whatever reason, it's still in the plan. So that street had to drop off. That's why we did that work on Pitt Street last year, because the grant was not going to be coming. So I don't know what happened, but it didn't come out of the 2022 plan. I'm sorry if I misled somebody.
You know, and really the financial management, when you're doing the capital plan, the next year is really the one that, so like 2021 is the one you're really focusing on. And you know, those future years are always fluid. So, I mean, the fact that that's in there right now means that maybe there's another street that you'd pull into it because that one got pulled. So, you know, I would think that you would still be doing the same amount of work bonding wise. And maybe it's just a project that needs to be replaced with something else at this point. The other thing on this schedule that that we should point out is up on this line is the amount that's coming from the general fund reserves, as we talked about before, that we have transfers coming out of the general fund that are scheduled to fund some of the CIP. Now that money is coming over, and in this plan, it's showing that it's really running the general fund balance down to its policy. But with your budgetary fund, was your budgetary flexibility, usually that pot of money gets replenished, and then your fund balance continues to float along at the level it's at. And that's, I think, Nicola, I think you said that you're thinking about changing that methodology, so that probably wouldn't be a transfer in the future potentially, right?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we'll be working towards.
Okay. And this is just a graph that kind of shows, you know, the CIP as far as total revenues, total expenditures, how much we're borrowing, how much we're using in levy. 2024 is the fire station kind of blowing up those columns where you see that. As far as the debt policies you have so far, have right now, you have that you will not have long-term borrowing, or your long-term borrowing will not be confined to projects and equipment that cannot be financed with current revenues, or will be confined to projects that you cannot finance with current revenues. The useful life of any project borrowed for needs to be more than 5 years. I said that backwards than what it says there, but you're going to borrow for things that are more than 5 years of useful life. The term of any debt obligation should not exceed the economic life of the improvement. So when you borrow for a certain asset, you don't want to borrow for longer than its useful life, because you're not getting any use out of it. Really what you want to do is try to match your borrowing to that useful life, so that really, as you're paying the debt service, the people using that asset are paying for it on an annual basis. As far as your annual capital improvements, you'll finance no more than 75% of your capital financing with long-term borrowing. Your statutory debt limit, so the debt limit is 5% of your equalized value, which is, you know, let's see, I think we have that, don't we? That's coming up here. I'll show you that in a few slides. So right now, the equalized value is 5% of your, or your debt limit is 5% of your equalized value, and you have a policy right now that you will only use 70%, which means you're leaving about 30% for emergency purposes. And then as far as recent policies that you've put in place to kind of bring some of the issues that were out there a few years ago, is that you adjusted your borrowing practice so that you only issue debt for the same amount that you're retiring. And that's been just a plan that has basically brought your capacity back into range, and you're actually, you're getting a lot more flexibility with your debt. As far as the way the CIP flows through the funding schedule that you typically see when we come to you with borrowing, this schedule actually works backwards, where we're taking the amount that a payment that is coming off as existing and working backwards to come up with how much we can do in projects. So we worked it backwards from the payment that you'll have as existing, and that leaves you with how much is available to borrow equipment wise. The other thing that is in here is the the fire station, kind of showing you that amount that'll be projected at this point with how much that borrowing would be. And then this is, go ahead. Did you have a question?
Oh, I found it. Fire station is about $5 million added.
That's how much staff had talked to me about as far as a placeholder.
Yeah, because on the previous bar graph, you went from 3 million up to almost a little over 8 million. So you're talking about 5 million added for the fire station.
5 million on top of your average 3 million of projects.
Right.
Yep. So the effect of all of that is to so the schedule on the left side of the page is that base case that we talked about before. So if you went back to that page, you'd see that the tax rate matches up from that page. And then we have the 5-year CIP debt payments. We could have showed you every year, but this schedule would have been ugly and I wouldn't have been able to put it on the screen. So the pink section is actually all 5 years of principal interest on the amounts that are in the CIP, including the fire district. Just for purposes of talking about the fire station, if I take out all the growth, so we have 0 growth for the city, no TIF closures, so that we have absolutely no growth whatsoever. The way that we ran the fire station for this purpose, and this was staff and Ellers talking about it, we ran it as level principal and interest so that we could see what it did on an annual basis. And so without any growth and level principal and interest, it's about 52 or 53 cents per year that fire station would add for the next 20 years. So 2026 through 2045, I suppose it would be. It would be about 53 cents per thousand that you would have for just the fire station. Now, when we actually run the structure of the fire station, we would do it in such a way that we would have it structured to fit your tax rate. Because when you see what that level principal and interest does to the debt service tax graph that I'll show you in a couple schedules, you'll see that that isn't the way we'd want it to look when you actually got there. So that was something I wanted to make sure you understood is how much that is by itself. I think that was important for for staff to have you here. And then you can see that as we're going along with the CIP, we're adding tax levy support into here. It drives you up to about $3.18. Without that level principal and interest, we could probably bring that number down some. But with that being in at level, it kind of, it makes the debt payments a little more expensive than they would if we had structured that fire station. So I think that 318 is high, but you can, it will be still up a ways, and you should expect that when you do a $5 million building that you're going to have a bump in your tax rate. So here's the graph that I was talking about. We have a couple things at play here. We've got the TID levy support in the orange here that is new. That's kind of adding on to some of your debt. Then you have the new debt with the fire station kind of bumping. Here's a fire station with this brown, and that really makes that whole tax levy for just debt really jump up there. If we structured that fire station the way that we would want to have it, is we would get to a plateau maybe a little bit earlier and then start bringing that down smoothly so it doesn't have that bumpy look to it. And it would take off some of the, it wouldn't be the 318, but we would definitely have a smoother decline, more like what your existing debt's doing, even though it has a little bit of bump in it too. That's some of that old debt that's still out there. But more of a smooth decline is what we try to get it to. And once you're past a project like the fire district, if you didn't have anything existing, if you didn't have any big projects coming up, we would want this graph to look basically flat. Every year we'd be doing certain projects. We try to structure the debt in such a way that you'd have a flat tax rate for debt. That project does damage to that feel that you would want to see. Okay. Any questions on that? You want to add anything on that, Nicola?
I guess my question is, I guess I missed something. The fire station is $5 million. When were we told it's going to be $5 million?
So that was just a placeholder. I think it's actually 6 million, with $1 million coming from other funding sources, grants and so forth, and then 5 million. And that number was used really just starting last year when this was being discussed, so that there would be an opportunity for the council to visualize the impact of a borrow like that and what that would do for our long-range financial plan. And so last year was the first year that was presented to the council. You may remember, and it was actually a separate part of the presentation. We had tables that were without the fire station project, and then tables with it in. And this time, since it was put into the 5-year plan, I don't think Ryan is on the call yet tonight, but if he is, he could probably explain how he came up with that number.
Well, it's being studied right now as to what we need. So
Yes, it is.
This 5 million is a shot in the dark. Is that what it is?
Well, I can't speak for where Ryan, how he came up with that amount, but it is there he is.
If you want, Nicola, I didn't have any input on that. That was just a number that I believe Karen just threw in as a placeholder.
Oh.
Just because they had no idea what it would be until the study was completed. So they just threw a placeholder number in. So we have not, we've put some rough numbers in. I think the CIP says 6.5 million, but that can drastically change after the study is done. So we'll have a more accurate estimate, I think, once that Five Bugles does their part of the study. We'll be able to give us a estimated construction cost of the facility.
And just so the city council knows, the numbers we used were numbers that were back from June, and I think you were still working through the CIP process before we could get this done.
Actually, the CIP process hasn't taken place yet.
Okay.
For
even more of a reason.
So, yeah.
Any more questions on the effect and what this graph demonstrates as far as putting in some type of a facility, whether it's 5 million or 6 million, it's still going to have this look. It's just going to be a little bit bigger bump. Okay. And then as far as the debt limit, this is the numerical version, which I think would have driven Karen crazy a year ago. So I'll give you a little nicer look at it. So the debt limit is 5% of your equalized value, and that's the top of this blue line. Your policy is 70%, and that's the top of this red line. So with the 5-year plan, as we received it from staff, the projects that are in there, including the fire station, keep you well below that 70% debt limit policy. So I have it where if with the fire district in, or the fire station in at the $5 million building, the high you would be at is about 55% in 2024. And if I take out the fire building, you'd be basically, your high would be where we are right now at 5660. So, the one thing that this plan can help you look at is the 70% debt limit, something that you really need to maintain, or is it something that you might consider lowering, that you may not need to ever get that high again? But that's something that you can consider as we look at this process. Any questions on the debt plan before I go in the general fund? Okay. So we did a little bit different this year. The model we use gives staff a little flexibility as far as changing the parameters of the numbers. We gave Nickel a couple shots at adjusting it, and as you know, there's a few weird things going on in the world tonight. As your conversation went on for a while about the masks, we definitely adjusted some numbers manually because of what has been going on, whether it's adjusting your recreation to 0 and then back up in future years. There's a bunch of things that are going on behind the scenes, but we basically on the lines that didn't have an impact, these are the rates that we use to grow those specific types of line items in the plan. So this is what we used as our forecasting percentages. So applying those plus some manual adjustments that staff inputted, we have the numerical version, and I'll try to get this to the numbers you should look at. As you can tell, over here is the transfers out that we talked about from the general fund. The 557,000 is what was in your audit that we just looked at a little bit ago. Projected amount that you're transferring is 479. I think that was a set in stone number that you had in your audit, right, Nicola? And then the 300,000, and some of these numbers out in the future are, what can we use until we're down at this 20% level, which our policy says that we're not going to go below that 20%, and I'm not exactly sure. Oh, we ran out of money, so we get to the 19%. So what we're saying in the plan is in the current budgeting, there's flexibility in the numbers, and that some of this we don't anticipate actually driving this down to this policy level, that the general fund would actually be able to continue to transfer money without actually driving it down. As you'll, let's see, was there anything else on this one I needed to show you? I think that's really the key. Was there anything else that you wanted to show on this, Nicola?
I was just going to mention that when we talk about budgetary flexibility, what that means is that we come in under budget at the end of the year. So we basically have some surplus, and that surplus drops into the unassigned reserves. Mm-hmm. And as David's talking about, in that second to the last green bar, you can see how that reserve level is declining down to 19%. However, it does not take into consideration that budgetary flexibility or the surplus going to the unassigned fund balance. But having said that, in the coronavirus era, we are not necessarily going to see any budgetary flexibility or surplus. In fact, we know that in 2020, we are likely to have a budget deficit because we have lost certain revenues that we usually have and that were in our budget. So, so that's where we will continue to closely monitor the what's happening with budget performance and how that impacts our unassigned fund balance.
Well, and the other thing that we definitely don't want to show is the rating agencies look at trends. And if we actually did drive this thing down, you would be probably dinged on the financial, I want to say not the measurements. So it would be a reflection on your liquidity and those type of things. And we definitely don't want our S&P to take a look at that trend and see that we're driving that one down. So if we can maintain it, it would be preferable as far as your rating goes. And so these are just some graphs that kind of show, right now we're kind of projecting that the tax levy will have a fairly slow incline. And as we get to the levy limit discussion, that's actually doable at this point. And this shows actually where we're using the fund balance, but like we talked about, that assumes that there's no budgetary surplus on an annual year. So we would hope that we wouldn't be using that up. This just kind of shows, there's a graph of how the different categories have gone. This shows that we're using that unassigned down to the policy. These other lines kind of hold steady because we're trying not to have advances. And that seems to be holding, and a lot of the non-spendable could be things that maybe we paid for in December that were for the next year and are fairly consistent year to year. And then this is a line like I talked about. It shows where the fund balance is being used down to that policy line. But like we said, that's something that I don't think you'd want S&P to see this downward trend. As far as the levy limits go, this is this is a graph that we actually put together last year. The blue section is the operating part of the levy limit, and it grows by net new construction every year. And net new construction is not a big number this year, I think. 0.23% sound right to you, Nicola? So, it's not growing at leaps and bounds, but that's a section that you basically want to use for paying your operating costs. And then this red section is really where you're paying for your long-term debt. Now, the reason it looks like we have this big bump out here is because we have a levy for the capital projects fund that seems to bounce around quite a bit. In the 2021 budget, in this plan, it says 295,000. In 2023, it's saying 882,000. So what's happening is our normal operating part is still paying for some of our debt, but in those years where that levy goes up basically 500,000, you don't have that capability of swallowing that without using some of the that adjustment on the levy limit worksheet. So, what we'd like to have you do is have a level levy for the capital improvements fund that doesn't bump like that, and try to maintain more stabilized tax rates when it comes to that. If you're using up this operating with more general fund usage, obviously, you're not going to have as much room to do the levy for the capital improvements fund. And eventually, if you don't have that ability to grow that operating line, you're going to have to maybe borrow for more of your projects than you would have with this available tax levy. So this maximum levy, really what that dictates is this is the line that is affected by net new construction, and then this is your total debt service principal and interest that is out there that you could levy for on a levy basis. So this is the overall property tax with all the different pieces. We have the general fund, we have the capital projects fund, which as you can see, that capital projects fund levy does bump up because of that big increase. The taxi really doesn't do much to the levy. The existing debt it's coming down, you're paying that off, but then you're inserting this levy support, and then we're paying for new debt, whether it's the road projects or the fire station. So you can see the operating part, is dollar-wise is increasing like this, and levy-wise is increasing. So you are using some more of your levy limit than you would have. But the biggest thing that's keeping us from having a nice smooth tax rate is this capital projects fund levy that just doesn't have a real stable effect here. I think, if you look back at, if we just had the debt part of this and had no tax levy support or TID levy support, that the debt part is probably fairly flat, but it's that levy for the capital improvement plan and then the general fund kind of going up, which is just a projection that's affecting this. On this one, this is another one that is kind of an old city chart. This comment over here is actually not worth anything because you will be within levy limits based on our projection. So that comment doesn't mean anything. It got into the thing, and as I was going through it today, I went, boy, that doesn't make any sense because you're well within levy limits. But the things that could affect this projection, if you have growth in TID 6, you may not have to do that levy support for that, and that would decrease how much you're using of levy and decrease your rate. If you grow, that obviously lessens the impact of the levy rate increase. And then, if you were to actually have increased state funding, which I don't know that that's ever going to be really a thing, that would help as well. As far as internal decisions, decreasing expenditures would obviously help, or current CIP or wage projections, maybe they're too aggressive and you may have to adjust those. Otherwise, is there a way for you to come up with maybe some alternative revenues? I'm not sure if you've gone down the road of like wheel tax and some other types of revenues, but maybe there's ways for you to find other revenues to be able to support your expenditures. But I don't think at this time you're not at the point where I don't feel like you're desperate enough to have to do that part. In fact, you're like I said, your numbers you're well within the levy limit. So this is something to think about in the future if you ever get to that point, but I don't think it's something that's pressing. As far as future, or some notes and some future things, staff wanted to kind of talk about the shared revenue. Last I had heard from one of my other clients is they actually had an increase in their shared revenues, but you never can tell when the state will start to grab. So what staff wanted you to know is that if there was a 5% cut in state shared revenues, that'd be about $110,000 of lost revenue that would start to put some strain on the levy limit. Utilizing unassigned fund balance, as we've talked about, the transfers coming out of the general fund to fund capital projects is something that's helped kind of reduce your borrowing. But as we talked about, it could get you in trouble as far as your bond rating if you continue to spend down, if you were actually to spend down your reserves to that policy. Promoting economic development, increasing net new construction, without being a big tax increase to your existing taxpayers. Obviously be great if you could get some growth. One of the things, this is a point that kind of came out of last year, and it isn't as big of a deal, but that 2013 debt that's out there, if there's a way to advance refund it, and we'll probably look at whether there's any savings in doing a taxable, but we're kind of hoping that the federal government will put back the advance refunding tool, which would allow you to use tax exempt borrowing to refund that 13 debt, and that may help us a little bit. We could stretch that debt for one more year. I don't know if that would make that big of a deal, but maybe we could save some money on it. And then, as we talked about before, just establishing more of a fixed levy for capital projects so that we don't have that bump in the tax rate, stabilize the tax rate. Maybe there's ways to utilize available levy limit tax levy to maybe fund certain things like a capital projects levy or an equipment replacement fund levy or something to that degree that you could bank on. And you know, one thing about those kind of funds is that if the general fund is in need of that money to come back to it, you know, it's always something where those capital funds don't necessarily have to have a levy, and you know, because the levy limit allows you to borrow, you still have a way to fund your capital projects. You'd have to do your annual analysis to see that it doesn't put you over certain policies, but at least you have something to fall back on. Anything I can answer questions on, or you want to move right into the TIF so we can go home and go to bed?
The first one there, the shared revenue, I thought the state had some extra money a couple of months ago. Where's that money going?
There hasn't really been, from what I can tell, that isn't something that is actually happening, but staff wanted you to make aware that there is talk about that, and that, you know, if the city were to lose 5% of its shared revenues, that'd be about 110,000. So that's kind of just a informational point that, you know, there has been talk about whether or not the municipalities would take a hit because the state was hurting. And I don't.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
thought they had extra money.
Jim was mentioning that there was some headlines that there was some additional income tax revenue that the state collected. But Ken, I don't think any of that will be coming our way. The reason we put this in here was simply because, as you may remember, towards the beginning of the year after we saw a lot of shutdowns over COVID-19, the state government did ask for a 5% reduction for state department budgets. And so there was some talk at that time whether there could possibly be a budget repair bill at the state level, and whether or not the state might retract some of its shared revenue funding. It seems the general consensus is that is unlikely, but depending on how bad the state budget situation gets, it is a possibility. And so we wanted to make the council aware that that it is a remote possibility that we could see a reduction in shared revenue.
Well, has shared revenue gone down every
Not
year,
currently.
say the last 5 years? It went down to 1 year that they cut us on transportation, and that's why we have the wheel tax now.
Yes, transportation aid did decrease, but the other shared revenue has remained pretty steady the last 3 or 4 years. I think we can go on to the TIDs then.
Okay. Let's grab that one then.
And since we have looked at some projections on the TIDs earlier this year, I think that the council's fairly familiar with the TIDs, so we could probably move through this fairly.
I'd love to. Okay. So we'll start with TID number 5. We are projecting no new value in the projection when we get to there. TID 5 is a donor district to TID 7. And the cash flow will show that we are making donations from 5 to 7 through 2025, and then projecting to close TID 5. So the amount of the donations that we're expecting to go to TID 7 between 2020 and 2025 is about 4.3 million. The city's going to monitor this, and as you know, as we talked about, if there is not a reason to send that much money over there, if TID 7 has some growth, that maybe TID 5 could close earlier. So this is the cash flow. The increments that are projected, the totals at the bottom are the 2020, so basically the current years through the future. From 2020 to 2026, we expect that TID 5 will get about $6.6 million of TID revenue. There's some Department of Revenue type exempt computer aid type things that we get in. We have a tax incremental revenue bond that we're paying on through 2023. And then as we talked about, we're we're anticipating sharing increment with TID number 7 through 2025. We have some administration fees, but as you can see, we basically don't have a fund balance in there because we're donating up until 2025, and then we will close the district in 2025. TID number 6. We're also predicting we're not showing any additional value in the projection. The city is going to request from the Joint Review Board to extend the life of TID number 6 by the 2 extensions that the district is eligible for. One's the technical college extension, which means that when the state took the value from the technical colleges off of the tax roll, or took the dollars off the tax roll for the technical colleges, that hurt some TIF district calculations and set them back. So there's a 3-year extension for that. And then there's an automatic 3-year extension you can take advantage of as well. The reason you do this is because with the tax levy support that we're talking about in the financial management plan, you would be able to recoup that tax levy support through the last year of the 2nd extension, and you would get it back in full. So what that'll do is actually in the future will provide you with funding that you could potentially use towards your capital projects when that money starts to come back. So that would be a good thing in the future. As far as TID number 6, the levy support we show is going to be through 2028, about 1.4 million. And that's a reduction. And I think I talked about this earlier. In the last year's plan, it was almost $2 million. So you can tell that growth in TID 6 really helped take down how much that tax levy support was necessary. So in here we have the increment projection of 7.7 million. Once again, DOR revenues of $4,000, the levy support that we were talking about for the 1.455 million. I consolidated this, all the debt service, principal, and interest, so that we could fit this on the schedule and see it. And then this is where I show that, so we've got a couple, hopefully you can see this, but one's kind of a brownish color. That's the first extension. The green one is the second extension. As you can see, we finally start getting money available from the TIF district to pay back the general fund for that levy support. We also have some administration payments and some developer incentive payments that get paid out of the TID. But with those 2 extensions, the district would close with a positive balance and by paying off the tax levy support. Okay. TID 7, according to the plan, the anticipated inclusion of the Ruxton Apartments and the transfer of the library block back to the city in 2025 was projected to close by 2026. However, with the growth in TID 7's projections and delaying basically. Let's see. Okay, that's what I thought. I was getting ahead of myself, but with TID 7 improving and us actually pulling out 1 year of increment sharing that we showed in last year's plan, it does delay the closure by 1 year, but it does allow TID 5 to close a year earlier. So staff thought that was a good trade-off. The increase in the value from the Ruxton Apartments has a corresponding decline that's going to occur as a developer. The payments from the developer will stop because they'll meet the guaranteed value that they have on that property. As we talked about, TID 7 is a donee district from TID 5, and the current projection shows that you'll receive those donations, as I said before, through 2025, but that could be changed depending on monitoring whether that's necessary. Like I said, there's there's actually a PAYGO. That was TID 6 I was talking about. In TID 7, there's also a PAYGO with the developer for the library parking facility that'll continue until 2025. And at that point is when the city will take over ownership. So that PAYGO will be eliminated. And then as far as advances from other funds, they should be repaid by 2021, early 2021. And that's when TID 7 will have that cumulative positive balance. So you'll see here that what I'm talking about is where we go to positive here for a cumulative balance. That's at the point, that during that 21 years when the general fund and any other fund that the advances are between will be paid off. So we have about 5.6 million of increment. We have a refunding that we did this year, I believe, is this 1.2 million. The revenue sharing from TID 5 is in here. The payments from the developer that I talked about, and then this once again is a consolidated debt service schedule, and then you have the developer payments that cease when you get that library block back, along with some administration. Gives you pretty much positive annual cash and the ability to potentially close in 2031. But that probably assumes no further projects, right, Nicola?
Right, that's correct.
So, this could change as far as closure if you decide that there's other things within the project plan or amendments that you might make to do more here that you would have fund balance potentially in the future to pay for some of those improvements as well. But at this point, we aren't projecting any new projects in this cash flow. And I think that is the end of the TID presentation. If you have any questions about any of them, I'd be happy to answer them.
So has there been a change as far as the possibility of getting the library? The last I heard, I thought it was just an open question whether the city would actually get the library.
No, it was part of the developer agreement. I don't know if Joe is still on the call, but it was an assumption in the developer agreement that the ownership of the library would transfer to the city.
Well, the city now is paying $18,000 a month for the library. So who gets that money? The developer?
The developer gets that money, but the developer is paying property taxes, which are coming back to the TID.
And how much property tax are they paying? You know,
I don't have that information in front of me, but I can certainly get it to you.
Okay, folks, Ken asked a question. Any other people with questions? Isaac, any questions?
No questions.
Kathy, any questions?
No.
Robin?
I might have a couple questions, but I don't think I have the ability to absorb the answers. So I'm going to send them to a future
So
date.
write those down, right.
Yeah.
And I hear Jason laughing. Jason, any questions?
Yeah, no, not right now.
I think, I
It is
don't know
10:30.
what happened to Eileen. It appears,
I'm
oh,
back.
there she is.
I'm here. I have any questions? No questions.
Okay. I do have empathy for people who are seeing these schedules for the first time. Yeah, I've been looking at these presentations for 2 days so that I could actually make some sense of them. And if you've never seen them before, yeah, it's really, it really gets complicated. So thank you, David, for sharing. And Ken, Ken?
Is Colette there?
Colette is here, I think. I saw Colette somewhere.
Yeah, I want to thank her for sending me a copy of this.
Oh,
It
I
made-
am here, Ken.
It
You're
made
welcome.
life easier.
Yes, it does. It makes it easier if you can get it bigger, and that's why I downloaded it, so it would be bigger than when David showed it. So folks, that is the financial management plan. I'm sure that Nicola would be more than happy to answer additional questions. When your mind clears, I'm sure that Adam would be happy to answer additional questions. And I'm sure that either of them or both of them could get a hold of David and or Dawn in the event
Absolutely.
that's needed. So David, thank you for bearing with us. I know it's been a long meeting. It's been a long meeting for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in that there appears to be no, oh, Adam, I didn't ask if you had any questions.
No, we're good.
Well, I probably should have. So I do have one question, and that is the question of the night as to who is going to help us adjourn at 10:30.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second to the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. And so, Colette, I guess we have to vote by roll call. I'm not sure why, but go ahead.
Great. Killian,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Stanley,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Kopp,
Yes.
Art,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes, and I especially thank everyone for their patience and their listening and their attention tonight. These are extraordinary times, and I'm proud when I see how we're able to listen and react. So thank you very much, and have a great end of the first day of autumn. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.